This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate first part of what if Naruto got serious after the Land of Waves. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
You've been out here a while now. Gazing at the graves ahead, Naruto sat beneath the tree. Zabuza's sword reached roughly his standing height, even when buried as a headstone halfway into the ground. It had been written with a kunai by Kakashi Sensei in a much more elegant style than Naruto could have imagined. He was a ninja, though, it said. Zabuza Momochi fell as a true shinobi. Readers may assume the man fell during a mission or against a skilled adversary. Naruto considered the reality to be a more appropriate conclusion for the man. When the blade was exposed to blood, Kakashi explained to him how it could regenerate. The inscription would probably vanish if someone took the blade and used it, which was highly probable in the ninja community. Nevertheless, Naruto considered it a kind gesture. Naruto answered, "They've had me thinking for a while now." Kakashi looked over his shoulder as he leaned on the opposite side of the tree, his book open and a hand in his pocket. "Anything your sensei should be concerned about?" Kakashi asked. Naruto gave a shrug. Kakashi circled the tree and knelt next to him, placing a respectful hand on the recently packed pile of dirt. "This is your first time dealing with a death, even if it was an enemy's rather than an ally's," Kakashi responded. Naruto remained silent for a while. "Yeah. Haku. The hunter.nin that jumped in front of your jutsu. I met him. Before. When I was asleep after doing the tree climbing exercise. According to Kakashi, he didn't kill you. Didn't know who he was at the time. He could have too. Even when he woke me up. You made friends with him." "Yeah. A little bit. I guess you could say that. I didn't know who he was. Would have probably attacked him, and gotten myself killed if I did. But he didn't bring it up, just talked to me about protecting what's important. Even if it means." He pointed to the grave in front of him. "That." Naruto said nothing, a somber look on his face that he hoped would disappear. Naruto remarked, seeing both of them die like that. Dealing with death for the first time, it's always hard. Sometimes a shinobi's first encounter with it is a friend, sometimes it's a foe. You had the unique fate to have both. Naruto questioned, "What was your first?" before flinching and saying, "Sorry, that's probably personal, isn't it?" Kakashi grinned and said, "I'm your sensei. It's my job to help with these things. My first was an Iwa ninja. Didn't know his name, just an enemy. Caught him with a kunai to the back of the head. I remember being surprised when he fell down. Training dummies never fell, and that's all I'd ever thrown at." Naruto grinned. "I remember in the academy. They tell you to be prepared when you first see death. But, it's one of those things you can't really prepare for, is it?" replied Naruto. Kakashi gave a headshake. Kakashi stated, "It hits everyone." Naruto and Kakashi sat together for a while, both of them observing Zabuza's grave. Naruto hadn't seen him unoccupied and without his book out for a while. Kakashi made the question, "Are you worried about how it's affecting you?" Naruto gave a nod. "Don't be. I'd be scared if it wasn't. It's good that it's affecting you, no matter what other ninja may say. In the moment, when you're in the midst of life and death, that's the time to block it out. But this is the time to let yourself feel what you feel." As if in response to a question, Naruto stated, A shinobi must never show their tears." His voice broke, and Kakashi could hear it. Without a trace of derision in his voice, Kakashi declared, "I'll turn away. Just comprehension." Kakashi turned to hear his student make a series of choked sobs, and Naruto's face contorted as he nodded, his eyes already watering. Kakashi listened to his pupil cry as he let it all out. For a while, they sat together while Kakashi supported Naruto while he sobbed. Finally, he sniffed and wiped his eyes. "Is it harder than this? When you're the one doing it?" After turning around and placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder, Kakashi remarked, "I don't know by experience. My first encounter with death was also my first kill. But I've heard from others that it helps prepare for your first a lot." Naruto gave a nod. Naruto gestured to Haku's grave and said, "He never had that help. He hated killing. That's why he never went for the kill. With you and Sasuke?" Kakashi responded. Naruto gave a nod. I just got really lucky, him being my first enemy, didn't I? If it was anyone else." "I think so, Naruto." Naruto uttered, "Kakashi. Sensei. I need a lot of help." He sounded desperate, and Kakashi could hear it. The lack of confidence in his own skills. "On the bridge. Me and Sasuke couldn't touch him. Not once. I was pinned down and I couldn't move, and Sasuke. Even when he got his Sharingan, he could hardly defend me and himself at the same time. if he hadn't seen you about to kill Zabuza and disengaged. You've seen people who are stronger than you before, but this is the first time you've seen, wasn't it? Naruto opened the backpack that was slumped next to him by the tree and took out 3 scrolls, flashing them up at his sensei. Yeah. The villagers, when they raided Gato's hideout, they found Haku's belongings. They gave them to me as a gift. He had at least a dozen. I've only glanced at them, but the amount he knew more than me. The number of ways he could have killed me, that all went over my head, that I didn't even think about defending. I'm glad you're learning this lesson now, Naruto, Kakashi replied. Don't think that's a knock on your bull-headedness either. Nobody learns this until they experience it. And given how dangerous our profession is, not a lot of ninja get the chance to realize the reality of how lethal, how dangerous being a shinobi is until their last moments. In fact, you're the first on Team 7 to have learned it. Sasuke. He knows grief. He knows his life getting flipped on its head in a single day. But he only saw the aftermath of Itachi's work, not the process. And because of that, I could even say he knows helplessness, but not desperation. He gets stronger to avenge, not to survive. Naruto stated, I need to get better. I've been thinking about it for the last week now. Yano? If I want to survive in a world like this. Can you help me? Asked Naruto. Of course, Naruto, he said, and Naruto heard his voice change. Naruto could always hear patience in his sensei's voice when he yelled for a cool new jutsu or demanded to learn something that would make him Hokage. All he could hear now was recognition and understanding. Kakashi did not consider him a child. Like him, he was a fellow shinobi trying to live. Let me start with a basic rundown of your skills, a realistic one, not bravado. Naruto gave a nod. You need a lot of work to improve your skills. Your hand.to. Hand combat is academy level, but you make up for it with Kage Bunshin. Imagine how good they would be if your hand.to. Hand was at Sasuke's level. Your accuracy is similar, and your speed and strength are both low to mid-genin. I don't know your abilities in dispelling genjutsu, as I've never placed you in one, but I assume you don't know any. Naruto nodded. All right, so that needs work as well. Your chakra control is also high academy level, but only because of the tree walking exercise. It was much worse before that. I don't want you to think that you don't have any strengths, Naruto. You have a lot of chakra, and your pool is larger than many Jonin I know. The problem is that you can't use it. Right now, your shadow clones use D and C rank techniques to drain your chakra at a rate that's comparable to a genin with regular reserves. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them, but if you had those techniques, you could spam them to make yourself a monster to anyone in your age range. And to get those D and C ranked techniques down, said Naruto. Kakashi concluded, chakra control is necessary. Far more than you currently possess. For this reason, aside from the teamwork exercises I've had you guys perform, the first thing I taught you is how to walk trees. This will allow you to be somewhat effective in the field. However, when it comes to your Kage Bunshin, it's your main weapon, but it's not nearly as effective as it could be because of your deficiencies in all the other areas. The first of your greater strengths is deception and surprise. Naruto, you did a great job of taking my lesson about underneath the underneath. You demonstrated this in the bell test when you used the charging clones as a diversion to sneak up on me. Too many ninja rely on simple fighting, which is what people like you take down. The henge feint with the windmill shuriken you used against Zabuza was something I would use in a battle if I thought of it. I'll admit that I wasn't taking you seriously, and if I had, I probably would have seen you coming, but that doesn't take away from your accomplishment. That brings me to your second strength, your stealth. You surprised me in the bell test, and I didn't pretend to be surprised. That being said, I've only seen you use stealth once, so I'll ask, do you think your stealth is good? Naruto paused to realize that he didn't have the urge to yell in agreement that he would have a week ago. Rather, he considered his response carefully. Yeah. I'd say it's probably better than a lot of others in my age. When I was pranking, I got a lot of experience running and hiding from Chunin. They always caught me at first, when I was 6 or 7, but it got a lot easier as time went on. Did you wear your orange then? Got the jacket when I was 10. Before that, I wore white t-shirt most of the time. So it's been about 2 years of pranking with this on. Both are noticeable colors, especially at night. I'd recommend switching to a darker color when we get home. You'd find stealth would come even easier. Right. I've always wanted to stand out. I guess that's the opposite of what a ninja should strive for. Kakashi grinned. Do you think we could come up with a training regiment? Of course. Now that we've identified your needs, we can build them in a way that complements your strengths. You talked about C and D ranked techniques. Do you think you could teach me one, sensei? I'm not asking for something powerful or flashy like I always ask for. I want Something smart. Something that fits my skills. Something I can master and build on. Kakashi grinned at him. He kept the length of time he had been waiting to hear that from his student. Tell you what, Naruto. You prove to me you're serious by doing those boring chakra control exercises, and I'll teach you a jutsu. How about that? Naruto gave a nod. Most of my training is probably gonna be going towards that right now, anyway. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi parted his hair. Of course. Since I can't teach you one yet, though, allow me to teach you something that will make you a better shinobi than any jutsu. Naruto cocked his head. What we're gonna do is analysis of your fight with Haku. Everyone grows under the experience of a real fight, but you can maximize that even more. I have every encounter, every fight I've been a part of logged and scrolled at home, with my own commentary on what went right and wrong, and the commentary of some of my peers, so I can have more than one set of eyes on the situation. I saw the beginning of your fight, but not all, so let's go through the details, shall we? And Naruto did, explaining how he had hurried to Sasuke's aid, how Haku had dismantled them both, how Sasuke took control and was the only one who was able to learn Haku's timing, how he tagged him with a fireball jutsu, how Naruto was blitzed and paralyzed, how Sasuke was barely able to defend himself and fend off the Senbon needles, and how, just as Sasuke appeared to be running out of chakra, Haku cancelled the jutsu and replaced Zabuza with Kakashi's lightning blade. Naruto nodded and asked, alright, and that's all the details you remember? As he waited for his sensei to break down, Naruto pulled out a spare scroll, some ink, and a brush. Okay. Let's go chronologically. First, you need to work on your strategic thinking. When you finally reached the bridge at the beginning of the battle, I saw that you had made an entrance, which takes away a surprise element you could have used. It's advantageous when the enemy doesn't know where you are, and giving that away without receiving anything in return is like throwing away your kunai pouch at the beginning of a battle. There's no justification, and you just take away a potential tool you could have used. You should immediately concentrate on getting out of the mirrors rather than attacking the enemy because you were fighting on his ground and with his advantages. This is also true when you ran inside the ice mirrors. You corralled yourself and let the enemy trap you, which gave away your potential mobility and ability to attack from multiple angles alongside Sasuke. We tried later, Naruto replied, after we realized that fighting wasn't an option. Sasuke tried a lot of things, and I followed his orders, but it didn't work. What could I have done differently? Naruto inquired. Kakashi grinned. Naruto paused and thought, let me hear your ideas. This is part of the analyzing process, after all. When I tried to get out, I just tried to run with no plan. I could have used Cage Bunshin, and had them all run in different directions. Maybe even had some henge as Sasuke so he could try and get out too, or... Naruto stopped and palmed his face. I could have just substituted with something outside the mirrors. Kakashi said, don't be too hard on that one. Part of what makes Haku's ice mirrors possible is Zabuza's hidden mist technique. Your surroundings were obscured, so without a clear line of sight on a substitutable object, the ability to substitute becomes impossible, but your first points were a good plan. So, in the moment, how do I think strategically like that? It comes with practice, lots of it, but the basics of strategy are to take into account your advantages and your disadvantages, then come up with a plan. Let's take your battle, for example. What were your advantages and disadvantages at the start? Well, when I first got there, like you said, I had the element of surprise. Sneaking up on Zabuza was probably not an option, but Haku might have been manageable. I also... Naruto gave himself a moment to reflect. Had a stronger teammate to fight alongside with. One with more destructive jutsu. I could have tried to sneak up on Haku with a clone, and maybe get him in a hold so Sasuke could finish him with the fireball. Or try to wait for a moment of vulnerability when he was fighting Sasuke. It's a good plan. Sasuke was the most likely to take Haku down. Supplementing him should be your focus. Naruto grinned. This wasn't about pride, even though he didn't like hearing it. This was about what allowed you to survive a circumstance. When it came to something that significant, it didn't even matter if his feelings were hurt. Yeah. Haku was faster, stronger, and had the bigger repertoire than me. Sasuke was a closer match. The only way we could win in a 2-on-1 is if I had supplemented him as best I could. Good. Admitting that already shows your head is where it should be, Naruto. Confidence builds a ninja, but pride slays him. I want you to continue going through each part of the fight yourself, reflecting, thinking what you could have done better. Write it down and bring it to me when you're done. You could do the same with Mizuki as well. Kakashi stood up. When we get back to the village, I have some scrolls that could help you. I'll swing by your place. Study them, and Haku's scrolls. They'll help you quite a bit. Naruto gave a nod. He already had a strong desire to improve and become a better version of himself. He wanted to do more planning. He desired to increase his tree climbing skills. He desired to recover. No, he had to. He couldn't afford to disappoint his teammates or his village. Or oneself. Naruto entered the equipment shop as the bell rang above his head. He was greeted by shelves and shelves of tools, gear, vests, pouches, clothing, and other items. Like a child in a candy store, Naruto used to want to buy them all. He was a little confused now, unsure of what he needed and what the minor distinctions between that kunai pouch and this one meant in combat. Team 7 had reported to the Hokage after returning from the wave, and as a result, their mission was upgraded from a C rank to an A ranked one. Naruto knew he wanted to stop by when he noticed that his paycheck had 2 more zeros than he would have received with a C ranked. He still had a good amount left over after allocating a third of it to groceries and rent this month. In a battle, he had to broaden his options. He only had Kage Bunshin, who were each roughly as dangerous as academy students, as Kakashi. Sensei had warned him. He would be out of luck if he encountered someone who was much faster, who had no qualms about facing numerous opponents, who could dispel them with widespread jutsu, or who had a large number of opponents who could easily counter his Kage Bunshin. It would only benefit him to have more options and make better decisions in a fight. What exactly should he add, was the question. Naruto reasoned, it would be better to begin with what I know I need. Fresh clothing as well as some restocking on shuriken and kunai. Naruto passed the first aisle after grabbing a handbasket. Since the academy operated year-round and graduation coincided with enrollment, this meant that new genin, students beginning a new semester, and new students could now purchase items that were previously restricted without a ninja ID. Stores all flooded simultaneously. The result was what many chunin and jonin affectionately called the academy rush, when all of the equipment in stores was swapped out for merchandise geared more toward kids. The remains of last month's academy rush were in the first aisle. Packs of clear plastic with cartoons of ninjas that were cool and deadly were scattered throughout the aisle. They screamed phrases like mystery scroll inside and includes 2 Fuma shuriken across their covers. These packs combined outfits that were more intended for their deadly appearance than their usefulness, creating what appeared to be a toy aisle with a hint of lethality. Naruto flinched because he had obtained his own Fuma shuriken from packs like this, which he ultimately lost to Zabuza. However, the benefits of Academy Rush emerged later. About a month later, there was a sort of post-rush, when all the older ninja returned to resupply because they had all avoided the Academy Rush like the plague. This resulted in higher quality equipment and the choice to purchase individual items rather than packs. A pair of chunin were idly perusing the selection of clothes in the next aisle, which was filled with practical items in the colors black, dark blue, and dark green. Nothing fancy was necessary for Naruto. He noticed some specialty items, like one with the tag, swordsman's shirt, and one with one long sleeve and one short. He had no idea what these were used for, and while he considered them cool, another part of him retorted that they were practical. Rather, he selected 3 black cargo pants, 3 black t-shirts with long sleeves, and 3 black t-shirts without sleeves. Given that he would soon be growing larger, he didn't want to spend a lot of money on a new wardrobe. Naruto almost made it to the next aisle before turning around. This section contained clothing accessories, such as bandages, pouches, and similar items. Naruto looked around the islands. What would he need here? Naruto said to himself, analyze. What could each thing add to your arsenal? Naruto began simply. 3 bandage rolls. He had witnessed other ninjas use them to shore up their ankles for kicks and to wrap the end of their pant legs to avoid snagging. For medical reasons, a 3rd roll would be beneficial. A few pairs of sunglasses caught his eye. According to their tags, they were resistant to flash. Since flash tags were less common than explosive tags, he left these alone. He noticed a mesh undershirt with no sleeves. Was this necessary for him? Haku's senbon were still fresh in his mind, and he had little protection from ranged attacks. One couldn't hurt, he concluded. They only cost roughly 3 t-shirts, so they weren't that costly after all. Then he saw the head gear. The wall was lined with head coverings, hoods, and bandanas. At these, Naruto hummed. His hair was an issue if he was going for subdued hues now, particularly if it stood out against his equipment. He made the decision to leave them for the time being and return if he had any money left over. The words, "Request bands at counter," were displayed on a small sign next to the new headband plates. In fact, Zabuza's stomping on it while he had Kakashi. Sensei in the water prison had dented his. He wanted a new one that he could wear on mission, even though he knew an armorer could undent it, and he planned to do just that for his dented one. He didn't want to take the chance of damaging the one Iruka gave him because it was so special. Concealables was written on a hanging sign as he walked into the next aisle. This place was filled with scrolls and scrolls of sealed shuriken, kunai, and the like. To make up for what he had lost in the wave, Naruto picked up a 40 count of kunai and a 20 count of shuriken. Naruto had done some thinking, but he had only used 11 kunai, not 40. In practically every situation, a kunai outpunched a punch. If you could hit someone once or twice and they were done, why hit them a million times? Furthermore, kunai were sufficiently thin to allow for the weaving of seals around them. Those were the reasons he had included kunai work in his training regimen. It wouldn't be the same as the old him who saw himself using elegant taijutsu to prolong battles for the sake of fame. He'd get things done as fast as he could. At the Senbon, he stopped. Could he make use of these? He was undoubtedly impacted by the wave because of their usage. Naruto paused to reflect. Because they were lighter than standard throwing weapons, these were not very effective unless you had pinpoint accuracy to hit things like nerve clusters, eyes, and ears. He let them go. Even though he might want to use them, the learning curve for these was too high, and he needed to use his training time wisely when he could. The word, unconcealables, was the next island. Since taking something out of a scroll frequently gave your opponent an extra second, the title was a little misleading because anything could be hidden inside one. Instead, it referred to when you wanted your weapons unsealed and on hand, but if you weren't going to need them right away, you could still fit all of these into a scroll. Here were the larger weapons, such as Fuma Shuriken, staffs, katanas, and the like, as the island's name suggested. Naruto thought of a Fuma Shuriken that could be folded up. The battle against Zabuza had undoubtedly benefited from it. He placed 2 in the basket after picking them up. He looked at the next island. Antidotes and toxins. He had a strong desire for one of these, but his ignorance of venoms and poisons was a barrier. Words like bivalve mollusk paralytic, brown recluse necrosis, and bucaine cardiotoxin passed right over his head. Before noticing a Jonin at the end of the aisle, he looked up and down the shelves. He was a little embarrassed, but he would choose his life over his pride every day. Approaching, Naruto said, "Excuse me." The senior man looked up. His goatee had a small scar where hair didn't grow, and he wore a typical flak jacket. The man's gaze shifted from Naruto to his orange clothing and finally to his basket. Naruto hoped the things he was receiving showed how serious he was. The man grinned. His voice was deep but friendly as he asked, "What's up, kid?" The man put the bottle he was holding back on the shelf and said, "I don't know much about toxins, but I've been needing to pick some up. Could you help me?" Naruto was taken aback by the question, but since he had been considering his skills for the previous week and a half, the response came to him more quickly and probably more truthfully than it would have otherwise. "Sure thing. What's your specialization?" Stealth and deception, but I'm gonna be moving into close to mid-range ninjutsu specialist here soon. I hope to kinda combine the two." The man gave a nod. This was apparently a good response. He remarked, "I like it. If you're just getting started on poisons, then don't worry too much about getting into specific effects. I'd really only recommend a lethal and a paralyzer. It'll cover most of the stuff you want to do on missions. You'll also need 2 type of each, a domestic grown and a foreign grown." "Why's that?" "Ninja that try to develop resistances to poison do so with domestic flora and fauna first. That means poisons and venoms domestic to high no kuni don't work as well in high no kuni. So you tend to want to use domestic poisons when abroad, and foreign poisons when in country." After saying, "That makes sense," Naruto began to speak, fortunately catching the 400 milliliter bottle the man had just thrown to him. The man appeared to notice Naruto's vacant expression as he said, "That's a batrachotoxin. It's a neuro cardiotoxin harvested from golden dart frogs here in Fire Country." He also selected a small vial next to the bottles of frog poison and gave it to Naruto. "Those are fancy words for a poison that stops your muscles and heart. Get it in their bloodstream, and they got about a minute, even less the closer you get to their heart or a major artery. Always carry an antidote as well. Keep it in a seal if you need, but you never know when you might nick someone you don't want to, yourself included." He took another bottle from the shelf and gave it to Naruto, who carefully placed it in his basket. "Here's a good foreign lethal. That's an asphyxiate from the monitor lizards in Suna. Means it stops your breathing. Suna's poisons are the cheapest of the imports on market right now, cause of our alliance with them. They also have some of the best toxins in the world, which is a bonus." The man took 1 vial of antidote for each of the 2 additional non-lethal neurotoxins Naruto could use to paralyze. He did, however, emphasize that any poison, in the proper dosage, was deadly. With a typical coating on a weapon, these would just not be deadly. Naruto held up one of the bottles, swishing its contents in the light as the man slipped around the aisle and instructed him to wait. He expected them to be either green or purple. The majority of the poisons and venoms in this area were simply clear, with a few uncommon ones being clearish. Yellow. The man returned carrying several pouches of some sort. "What's your preferred throwing weapon?" he inquired. Naruto blinked. What's the best one for using poisons? I'm kinda fresh, so I can start to train in any of them." Naruto nodded and said, "Senbon, by far." He didn't want to pick them up at first, but he assumed that if you were using poison, the damage dealing wasn't much of a factor. Besides, they were light and difficult to see, so they were probably the best way to deliver any toxin. The man knelt down next to Naruto and tied a cloth carrier with 6 tiny holes on top around his right thigh, saying, "Then I guess Senbon." Naruto nodded and said, "Oh, guess I shouldn't presume. You right-handed?" The man took a Senbon out of a pouch and inserted it into one of the tiny holes at the top, saying, "Okay. This is a wet sheath. It'll keep your Senbon coated and ready to use. And you fill the poisons in here. They can hold about 4 or 5 coatings worth each. Make sure to wash out the carriers if you put anything else in them," he said, taking it off and then removing the covering on the side of the pouch to reveal 6 tiny cloth tubes attached to tiny plastic bulbs at the bottom. With a nod, Naruto unfastened the pouch and placed it in his basket. The man grinned and said, "Thank you very much, I really needed the help." "No worries, kid. Best of luck." In the end, Naruto chose a few more items, including a pack of explosive notes, a small sealing scroll to keep combat and travel gear he didn't want weighing him down, a flat knife he could keep in the bandages around his ankles, a 40 count of Senbon to pair with his poisons, and black sandals because his current navy ones wouldn't go with his new clothes. He reminded himself to keep his Fuma shuriken and antidotes near the top in case he needed them right away. At last, he selected 2 tiny pieces of paper that seemed to indicate your elemental affinity. It wouldn't hurt to know, but he had to practice chakra control first. He remembered the headgear in the clothes aisle by the time he reached the register, but he decided it would be too much trouble to go back and get it, especially since 3 other people were already waiting behind him. "ID please?" asked the cashier. After taking it out of his wallet, Naruto slid it across the counter. "Quite the selection of items you choose. Did you miss our sales a couple weeks ago? We still have some bundles you might save money on, if you're interested," she said after picking it up and inspecting it before slipping it back to him. As the woman entered their prices into her calculator, Naruto assisted in removing each item and said, "I'm good, thanks." As she raised the new forehead protector, she asked, "Do you want a different color, or would you like to keep the blue from your other headband?" Naruto retorted, "It might as well fit the theme and say black." She asked courteously, "Could you remove your headband?" She cut a piece of black cloth with scissors, wrapped it around Naruto's forehead, and placed it on the counter. Naruto complied. She removed a brush after flipping the protector to its blank side. "What's your ID number?" As she brushed them in, placed the cloth over the headband, and pulled out a tiny handheld puncher, Naruto counted off 012607, while punching the cloth in each corner with a lovely chink after each blow. Naruto took it from her and tied it around his head before putting Iruka's headband in his pocket. "Your total is gonna be 60,205 ryo. Of the money he had left, he spent roughly 3/4 of it. With the exception of one of the papers Naruto chose to carry, the woman sealed the contents in a tiny travel scroll and gave it to him. "Thank you for your business." It was Naruto who said, "Thank you." Eager to change when he got home, he tucked the scroll into his pocket and went outside, leaning against the wall and examining the square of paper he was holding. He grinned. Given his elemental nature, the store's guide informed him that the effect would differ. He wished for fire. Given where he lived, that was probably the case. It would allow him to expand his skill set with long-range jutsu and, ideally, give his clones more power. He sealed with one hand, concentrating his chakra while closing his eyes, and then he waited, gradually raising his chakra to the paper, which flowed through his coils like molasses. He opened his eyes and looked when they arrived at last. The paper became soggy on both sides after splitting in half. He had 2, water and wind. Apparently, that was excellent, except for Jonin. Very few people had more than one unless they were very good at. Naruto inhaled deeply. As the water droplets began to shear off the 2 wet pieces in his hand, they gradually became rigid. Like breath on a cold day, a swirl of cold fog swirled up at him, coating them both in frost. His thoughts flitted to Haku, the bridge, and the lethal Keke Genkai that she used against him, a technique that seemed to be ingrained in Naruto as well. In some way, it seemed, he too bore the Yuki clan's curse. He seemed to be of Hayatan ancestry. Show me. Pulling the chakra paper from his black cargo pants pocket, Naruto held it between his thumb and finger while closing his eyes and focusing. The paper split after a few seconds, becoming wet on both sides. For a brief moment, Naruto questioned whether his initial appearance outside the store was a coincidence. If it was possible, perhaps some of the chakra that was still present on his body after his encounter with Haku seeped onto the paper. However, no, his fingers became chilled as the halved slips gradually froze onto them. Sakura and Sasuke looked on in shock as Kakashi Sensei extended a hand. After removing the papers, Naruto gave them to the recipient. They were raised to the light by his sensei. The ice crystals on the paper glistened with iridescent sparkles. Naruto returned them to him, unsure of what to do with them. All he did was let them fall into the stream below the bridge. Well, Kakashi replied, if the Hayatan bloodline were to pop up in anyone with no explanation, I suppose you'd be the most likely candidate in Konoha. And that's not a remark on your unpredictability, either. The Uzumaki clan originally comes from Uzushiogakure, an island near Mizu no Kumi, which is where the Yuki clan lived. The bloodline purges started just a little before the destruction of Uzushiogakure. It's not unreasonable to think a Yuki clan member saw the writing on the wall, and sought refuge there with one of your ancestors, if your parents were actually Uzumakis, that is, which seems likely given your vitality. Still, Sensei. Sakura responded, don't you think it a little coincidental that we just fought someone with the Hayatan Kekkei Genkai, and now Naruto suddenly has it? You don't think he, I don't know, somehow stole it from that hunter. Nin, do you? No such ability or jutsu exists that could steal or copy a Kekkei Genkai, and we have no way of knowing whether he had the bloodline beforehand, since he never tested his chakra nature. Besides, Sasuke awoke his Sharingan on the bridge, and Naruto doesn't have that. You have the Sharingan, despite not being a Uchiha, Sakura replied. I got mine through an eye transplant. Regardless, dojutsu are different. When it comes to nature transformations, there's only one possible way to obtain it, and that's through a DNA splicing surgery, followed by a long period of incubation. The procedure has nearly a 99% death rate. To even do it, you'd need a large DNA sample from a Yuki clan member, which isn't exactly easy to find. I haven't ever had a surgery before, said Naruto, or woken up on a surgery table with unexplained stitches. Sakura uttered, still, though. At last, Sasuke said, I don't really see an issue. Sakura glanced at him. Another bloodline will only help us become more efficient in the field, and benefit us as a team. You saw the hunter. Nin use Hayatan, Sakura. This is only good for us. Naruto was taken aback when he heard Sasuke defend him. Besides, when it comes to Naruto, he needs all the help he can get. Oh, it was there. So, what now then? Sakura inquired. Are you gonna teach Naruto how to use Hayatan, Kakashi Sensei? For now, it's business as usual. I can't teach Naruto how to use Hayatan, as I can't use it myself. Nobody in Konoha can, as far as I know, which means Naruto here will have to employ a bit of self-discovery, unless Haku's scrolls have any insight? Disappointed, Naruto responded by shaking his head. Upon arriving home last night, he quickly perused each scroll to check for any information about Hayatan, but he was unsuccessful. Senbon throwing, stealth, chakra control, anatomy, and other topics are covered in great detail. However, there was no mention of any of the jutsu he employed. Naruto assumed that there was no need to write them down when you knew them by heart, and there was no way to pass them on to anyone who wasn't a Yuki. Although Naruto was hesitant to reveal his bloodline, he couldn't help but feel excited about the possibility of using it, which was now turning to disappointment. Right. Well, for now, just don't mess with it, Naruto. I'd rather you have myself or someone else supervising you while you experiment, just in case. Now, on to today's itinerary. The Hokage has given us a week-long vacation after our mission, given that you're all genin, and A ranks like that are more meant for jonin. If you have no objections, however, I will be assigning you all some homework. He smiled with closed eyes as Sakura sighed. He pulled out a small white scroll with red paint on the ends and said, now. It won't be anything too intense, just some things I want you each to practice on. Sakura. One of my colleagues was kind enough to loan me this. Do take care of it, as I'll need to give it back by the end of the week. It's the basics on detecting and dispelling genjutsu. Regardless of what direction you go as a ninja, this will be a good thing to know, but if you do choose to become a genjutsu specialist, this will serve as your most basic of foundations. Memorize it, and when we get back, I'll give you some experience with actually dispelling. He produced another scroll and turned to Naruto. He threw him the scroll and said, Naruto, we already discussed your training back in the wave. This will be a good start. It was unraveled by Naruto. Tree walking exercises, like sticking with your hands, rolling across a wall while sticking, handspringing up a wall, back, handspringing up a wall, and so forth, helped him further control his chakras and would probably come in handy if he ever needed them in a fight. Sasuke, here's a scroll I wrote myself. It's on Sharingan use. I suggest getting a sparring partner or using spinning wooden dummies to help you with your practice with some of the techniques in there. You'll particularly need a partner if you want to practice casting genjutsu with the Sharingan. Sasuke smiled for the first time and took the scroll, beginning to read it. We'll meet up here again in a week at, let's say 9 in the morning. We'll take a mission, and then I'll check your progress on training. From there, we'll continue with teamwork exercises. Sound good? They all nodded. Well then, take care. He then vanished, poofing into a cloud of smoke. Naruto had waited until he was finished because he wanted to ask him how to improve his diet, but it looked like he wouldn't get the chance now. Even the location of the elusive Jonin's residence was unknown to him. He turned his attention to his teammates. Sakura glanced anxiously at her scroll before turning to face Sasuke, who was already making his way down the bridge. "Oh, Sasuke," she said as she pursued him. "Kakashi-sensei said you'd need a partner for casting genjutsu, and since I'm learning to dispel them, do you want to?" "No," he called, not even bothering to glance behind him. Naruto scowled as Sakura withered. That was a bit too severe. Additionally, if she had cooperated, it would have accelerated their recovery, even if her sole goal was to become closer to Sasuke. "If I knew any genjutsu, I'd have helped, Sakura," Naruto replied. "Maybe we can work together on." "Shut it, Naruto," she exclaimed as she bounded in Sasuke's direction. Naruto let out a sigh. As he completed his 2 schedules, Naruto brushed some loose dust from his table. One for the end of Team 7's vacation, and one for this week. With some ink dripping down the side of the bottle, he put down his brush. Since there wasn't much natural light coming in through the window due to the sky outside just turning into a morning twilight, he had to raise his scroll off the table in order to read it clearly. Every morning would begin the same way. At 8 or 9, get up, take a shower, and eat breakfast. Then he headed to the training ground for his warm-up, jogging for 30 minutes. He would run laps around the grounds if he arrived before the allotted 30 minutes had passed. Chakra control would be from 9:30 to 11. He would warm up for half an hour by simply running up and down the tree, and then he would do the special exercises from Kakashi-sensei's scroll for 2 hours. Between 11 and 12:30, he would take a lunch break. It took another half hour to return to the training grounds, and then an hour of clone sparring practice. He needed to improve his hand combat skills with kunai, and this seemed like a good way to practice because he could actually find training partners. After sparring, he would practice throwing and accuracy from 2 to 3:30, which wouldn't require much energy because he would probably be fairly exhausted by then. Senbon takes 30 minutes, kunai takes 30, and shuriken takes 30. He would study from the scrolls of Haku from 3:30 to 5. He was eager to learn as much as he could, and Haku's scrolls were a wealth of information just waiting to be discovered. After returning to the training grounds, he had dinner from 5:30 to 6:30 and then continued to control his chakras from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Earlier, he thought of fusing sparring with tree climbing. He would give it a shot here, but he had to improve enough to be able to simply walk up the tree or stand if he wanted to spar. He would probably just practice regular chakra control in this slot until he became proficient because, as it stands, he still needed the momentum of running to make it up a surface. His schedule would change after this week. Since Team 7 didn't meet on Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays unless Kakashi-sensei specifically scheduled it, those days were the same. However, his team typically met at 9 on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, completed a mission, had lunch, and then completed another mission. Since they were typically completed at 3 or 4, Naruto made the decision that on those days, he would practice chakra control until 5 or 6, eat dinner, and then spend an hour or 2 further practicing chakra control by sparing trees. Hopefully, he will have sufficient chakra control by next week. Naruto grinned. He had received schedule, making advice from Kakashi-sensei back in the wave, and as a result, he was missing out on a crucial component of his ninja development. Ninjutsu practice. He already possessed chakra reserves at a mid-Jonin level, according to Kakashi. However, using it excessively was detrimental because Naruto only knew Kage Bunshin as a ninjutsu. Since the Kage Bunshin consumed a significant amount of chakra, spamming it was comparable to a reserve exercise meant to expand one's chakra pool. This basically meant that every time Naruto spammed it over the past month, he was gradually increasing his chakra pool, drip by drip, since he only knew Kage Bunshin. If he had only used Kage Bunshin, he probably would have been at low Kage level by the end of the year. Generally speaking, This was not a bad thing because practically no one opposed having more chakra. Typically. However, Naruto had virtually no control over his chakras, so boosting his reserves would only make him more vulnerable. It was already a steep hill to climb to develop chakra control with Jonin-level reserves from scratch. With Kage-level reserves, this was an almost impossible task. However, he would be fine if he gained good control and then increased both his reserves and control at the same rate. Of course, he still had Kage Bunshin at his disposal, and he planned to use him. He just couldn't produce dozens of them each day. As he collected Haku's scrolls and the one that Kakashi Sensei had given him, Naruto considered these things and packed them into his bag. This week, he was hoping to make some headway and become a ninja at last. He might even be able to get Kakashi to teach him the jutsu sooner than he had anticipated. After putting on his sandals and locking the door of his apartment, he jogged to the training grounds. Naruto called out, "Iruka! Sensei!" The man turned and grinned when he saw Naruto jogging toward him, his shirt smeared with perspiration. Without a mission's desk between the two, Iruka hadn't changed much in the 6 weeks since Naruto last saw him. He still wore the same flak jacket, had his hair pulled back in a ponytail, and was grinning like a big brother. He had a hand on his hip as he stood in the restaurant doorway. Iruka looked him up and down and exclaimed, "Naruto," with a raised eyebrow. "I'd have thought you'd be with Kakashi today. Not skipping again, are you? Nice change of clothes by the way." "Thanks, no, we're off this week after our last mission, got back 4 days ago." With a nod, Naruto said, "Oh, I was meaning to ask how that went. Care to talk over dinner?" "My treat." They entered the restaurant, which was an open grill barbecue, and were seated soon after. He picked up his menu and looked over the offerings. "So, I heard the mission went a bit pear-shaped. I figured with Kakashi as your sensei, though, I wouldn't need to be too worried." "Yeah. Our client, Tazuna, he hired us for bodyguard protection while he built a bridge, but neglected to tell us he'd be receiving more resistance than just bandits." Naruto was about to respond, "What kind?" when the waiter showed up. "Oh, I'll get the koji salmon," Iruka said. Naruto uttered, "I'll take the same." Naruto assumed that the waiter muttered, "right away," after writing them down and leaving. "I think they have ramen, are you sure, Naruto?" "Yeah, trying to eat a bit healthier," said Naruto, "but anyway, we ended up encountering some missing ninja." "That's some bad luck for your first C rank. Kakashi take care of them?" "Yeah, 2 Chunin and a Jonin, and a bloodline user the Jonin picked up and trained. Me and Sasuke." "Sasuke and I," interrupts Iruka. Naruto smiled teasingly. "Right, so me and Sasuke fought the bloodline user. Picked us apart. Would have taken us down, but he disengaged to take a killing blow for the Jonin at the last second from Kakashi Sensei." As the waiter brought out plates of steaming food, Naruto nodded and said, "Some mission. They bump it up to a B rank?" He had been trying to practice concealing his actual skill, along with other deceptions and things that could help him as a ninja, so he was omitting important details from Iruka Sensei, like the mission being an A rank. In order to see if he could conceal anything from Iruka, he approached this encounter as a game. "Yeah, I think it kinda opened my eyes though. Been doing a lot more training recently." "Oh, what kind?" With a salmon cube in his mouth, Naruto uttered the words, "A little this, a little that." Naruto swallowed and grinned, saying, "Oh come on, don't go trying to be all cool on me. I'm your sensei, you know. I can help with this stuff." He wasn't having an easy time with Iruka's hide info strategy. "Mainly chakra control. Not much. I've been telling you that you needed to work on that for years now. Kakashi finally break through to you?" Iruka raised an eyebrow and said, "Yeah. Taught us tree walking while in Nami no Kuni. Been expanding on that." Naruto muttered a curse. "You didn't say your mission was out of country, so you encountered foreign missing ninja? You knew I was trying to be elusive about details, didn't you? Well, when you make it so easy to pick up on, so, what really happened?" Iruka grinned after saying, "Got bumped to an A rank. The Jonin was one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Zabuza Momochi. You nearly got me on that one. Good trick, using something outlandish to try and hide the real truth." "I wasn't lying." Silence swept across the table. "You're not, are you? Kami, Naruto, you're lucky Kakashi is your Jonin sensei. I can count the number of other Jonin in the village that could keep up with the likes of him." Naruto nodded in agreement. "I wasn't joking about the whole opening my eyes thing. Seeing how outclassed I was made me realize how much work I have to do. I just hope I can get it all done before another Zabuza happens. Most ninja never face even one Zabuza in their career, Naruto, let alone multiple. Not unless we go to war. Just a stroke of bad luck. I wouldn't worry about it too much. All Naruto did was gaze out the window. Naruto's kunai slid into the cage Bunshin's armpit, causing it to pop loudly. Just where the clone's fist would have been, a gust of smoky wind blew in his face. It was a clean kill, right to the heart, but if it had been real, Naruto would have been struck. Panting, Naruto sat back in the grass. He raised his head back to the sky and inhaled sharply before slowly standing up. With a skillful twirl of the kunai between his fingers, he raised his fingers to form the hand sign for a cage Bunshin, and it came to rest in his palm as his clone appeared. He grinned. At least he wasn't nicking his fingers and wrist every time he tried, as he had been doing 5 days prior, but he was still half-hearted about not dropping the kunai when he did that. When his hands had free time, he had been using kunai to weave hand seals while jogging, reading scrolls, or doing anything else, and the results were beginning to show. Through some hand seals, the clone changed into a normal teenager, perhaps 15 years old, but noticeably more mobile than him. It was necessary for Naruto to practice fighting against various reaches. In order for his clones to practice on him, he also needed to locate some dull kunai. So far, he had only been rehearsing against unarmed adversaries. Panting, Naruto assumed his partially invented stance. After reading Haku's scrolls and practicing sparring, Naruto soon discovered several useful knife fighting tips, the most important of which was that there were 2 ways to use a knife. The first was with the knife in Naruto's left lead hand, which made it much faster at slashing and stabbing at arms and torsos but left you much more vulnerable. The alternative method was to fight with your knife in your right rear hand, Naruto's, which gave you much more control and defense with your lead hand and more force for your stabs. Additionally, you had a lower chance of being disarmed. Naruto had been preferring the latter when fighting hand opponents, but he thought the former was superior when battling another blade because it permitted parries, cuts to the knife, wielding arm or hand, and so forth. He just selected the rear hand option as it was, left hand open and ready to grab, blade in a forward grip near his chest. Straight grips were better for stabbing and general knife dexterity, which he preferred in his rear hand, but reverse grips were better for cutting and hooking around objects, and he preferred them when using the knife in his lead hand. After bouncing up and down, the clone swerved and closed in, slipping out of the way of a left hook. Naruto retreated. That was one drawback to his position. The thankfully minor cut on his cheek from 2 days ago, when he used his forearm to block a left roundhouse and had his kunai dug a little into his face, shows that it was a little more difficult to protect the right side of his face if he wanted a straight grip. He fixed it by holding out his left arm like a post. They had to either parry the hand away, try to get around it, or risk having their arm or wrist grabbed, which resulted in 9 out of 10 stab wounds. This created a barrier that they had to avoid and made their movements somewhat more predictable. An opponent's options were somewhat easier to respond to when the number of ways they could attack was restricted. The wind almost touched Naruto with a follow-up jab, grazing his nose. Naruto kept a close eye on his clone's movements and noticed a distinctive left roundhouse winding up in the hip turn. Choosing something so slow with minimal setup was a mistake. Naruto scowled. It only demonstrated the slowness of his own kicks, but he was glad to be able to see things like that. With his free left hand, Naruto uprooted the clone's right ankle and ducked, the kick whipping his hair. Naruto swept down with the kunai to the clone's bare abdomen as it lay on the ground after it toppled over. The blade sank through the clone's wrist and was nailed into its stomach, an inch deep but not fatal. The clone raised a terrified hand to stop it. It poofed itself to oblivion. The issue with fighting clones was that they never held their own. Naruto needed and desired the experience of securing the kill against an injured opponent, even though his wrist injury would have ended the fight. Breathing heavily, he sat back in the grass. It took a lot of energy to spar. He could set his own pace for exercises like tree climbing, but in sparring, your opponent pushed you to follow their pace. Although it appeared to be a minor difference, the impact on one's stamina was significant. Naruto sat for a while. It was going really well. Speaking of chakra control, since he and Tazuna were on guard duty from 9 to 5, he was frequently interrupted during the wave mission. As a result, he frequently didn't have much time during the day to climb trees. He could now give it his all, dedicating nearly 5 hours of his day at 2.5 in the morning and 2 at night. He was therefore already able to stand without falling and walk idly up a tree. Additionally, he was able to stick with his hands. This morning, he had a fair amount of success with hand springing, though it was still challenging because he had to quickly transfer chakra from his hands to his feet. It was still too far away to roll up a wall. Last night, he attempted sparring on a tree, and good Kami, if that wasn't the most difficult workout he's ever done. It was likely the most difficult chakra control exercise he had ever performed because he had to concentrate on both channeling chakra and his opponent at the same time. He didn't feel comfortable fighting higher up on the tree because he and his clone lost focus too often and fell before catching themselves. Naruto was about to stand up and create another clone, the final one for this hour, before he would move on to accuracy when he heard a rustle in the grass. He pivoted. A square cardboard box with eye holes on the front and paint applied to resemble a light brown rock was sitting there. Naruto arched his brow. He knew only one person who was so stupid as to create such a disguise in a grassy field, no less. Naruto remarked, "Konohamaru, that wasn't your best work there." He shielded his eyes as the child, for whatever reason, detonated a flash bomb before coming out, smoke swirling around him. The words, "You saw through my disguise, boss," were spoken by Konohamaru. His big scarf was tied around his neck, and he was wearing the goggles Naruto had given him. Naruto gave the child a smile. Naruto questioned, "Kon, shouldn't you be in the academy right now? I'm sure Ebisu is probably out looking for you right about now." He pointed to him and said, "Hey, let him look, I could learn more under you in a day than from him or the academy in a whole year. Besides, I still need to learn that Kage Bunshin of yours." Naruto scowled. "I'm not too sure about that. Ebisu is a Tokubetsu Jonin. He knows a lot more about being a ninja than I do." "What? But you totally trounced him not even a month ago." "That was with a dumb jutsu that would never work in a real life or death situation. If me and him actually fought, I doubt I'd last more than a handful of moments." Konohamaru looked skeptical. "Are you okay, boss? You look different." Naruto grinned down at him. Something about Konohamaru's innocence struck him. There was a part of him that wanted to hold on to his innocence while he still had it, but there was also a part that wanted Kon to understand exactly what he was getting into so he would stop playing around and take his time at the academy seriously. Give him a little more time to be a child. Furthermore, he reasoned that he wouldn't be able to see someone like Kon, no matter how much he talked. He would probably require Naruto's experience, which was not going to happen anytime soon. Naruto stood and stretched, saying, "Just been taking my career as a ninja a bit more seriously." "Who were you fighting just now? You totally destroyed him. How'd you make him puff up into smoke like that? If you thought I was actually facing an enemy, you should have ran to tell someone in the village, and you especially shouldn't run out in the open if you don't know whether he was dealt with." Naruto grinned. "But to answer your question, that was just one of my clones I was sparring with." "I thought you'd seen him puff like that before?" "Oh yeah," he replied. "Hey, can you teach me that Kage Bunshin?" "No, Kon, that's a B-ranked forbidden technique from the Scroll of Seals. Alongside it being illegal to teach, you don't have anywhere near the chakra reserves to try and perform it. You'd likely die of chakra exhaustion from even attempting it." "Ah, come on boss," I said. "No, Kon, maybe when you're at least a Chunin and if you have permission from the Hokage. Even then, I'm not even sure it would be a good jutsu for you to learn. It would likely still run you out of chakra for little gain until you're at least Jonin or higher." Naruto sighed, "But that'll take forever, come on. I've said no twice now. I need to practice accuracy, and you need to get back to the academy." With his hands clasped, Konohamaru begged, "Please, please, 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 PLLEAC. Kon, this isn't something you can handle. Now follow me. I need to get you back to the academy." Konohamaru just folded his arms and sat. "No way. I'm not going anywhere till you teach me this jutsu." "Come on, Kon, don't be like that." He frowned and said, "That doesn't sound like you teaching me Kage Bunshin," with his nose up and eyes closed. After giving it some thought, Naruto let out a sigh. He looked up hopefully, and Konohamaru thought it sounded like a sigh of resignation. Naruto hoped it was a resigned sigh. He was about to do something he didn't like. Then he turned his head toward the village. "Alright, come on. Follow me." "Wait, what? You're gonna teach me?" Konohamaru leapt with delight as he said, "Sure. Need to take you to a private training grounds to do it, though. It is illegal, so I can't have anyone seeing me teach you." The two then headed back into the village proper along the road. Konohamaru attempted to mimic Naruto's gait, which featured his hands behind his head. Naruto turned right down an alleyway and then left on the next parallel street, asking, "So how many clones does the jutsu let you make?" "I'll tell you when we get there." Without Konohamaru noticing, Naruto circled a building and asked, "What are the hand signs?" "I'll tell you when we get there." Even though Naruto was now aimlessly wandering, Konohamaru didn't seem to notice because he was too preoccupied with the prospect of learning a jutsu. "How long do they last? Where's the training ground at? Can you send a clone to the academy and just stay home?" "Kon, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I'll tell you when we get there, okay?" He said, "Okay boss," and Naruto walked with him for a while. He took a quick look behind him. He was still unable to see the man or even be certain that he was following him. Being skilled at stealth did not equate to being skilled at detection. Naruto still needed to work on this area. Naruto was certain that the man was following them, though, because he wasn't a Tokubetsu Jonin for nothing. Naruto stopped as he entered an alleyway. He said, "Come on out, Ebisu." Nothing happened for a second, and Konohamaru looked up at him bewildered. Naruto felt somewhat foolish. With all the time he wasted wandering, he was certain the man would discover him sooner. Then, out of nowhere, two Ebisu clones appeared on either side of the alley. In front of Naruto, the actual Ebisu swung into being. With a smile and his dark glasses pushed up his nose, Ebisu remarked, "Ah, Uzumaki. Trying to steal my student again?" Unaware that the alley's entrance behind him was likewise blocked off, Konohamaru was backing up. "Boss, run!" he exclaimed as he turned. All Naruto had to do was reach out, grab his wrist, and pull him back. Konohamaru gazed up at him, perplexed. Naruto pulled Konohamaru forward gently as Ebisu raised an eyebrow. "The opposite, actually," Naruto said to Ebisu. "Just needed some time to make sure you were on my trail. Still pretty bad at detecting others. I believe you were looking for him?" Konohamaru finally appeared to understand, saying, "He came looking for me for some training." Didn't seem to want to take no for an answer. "Boss, you liar," Naruto grimaced slightly, reminding himself that, although he was unaware of it, it was for Konohamaru's benefit. Because of that extra hour of studying, he would rather have Kon angry with him for a week and be alive than be friendly with him and die. "And this isn't some perverse trick, like last time?" Ebisu asked, and Naruto shook his head. "I see." Ebisu frowned as he studied him for a while. "On that note, I'd like to apologize for all that. I've been trying to take being a ninja a bit more seriously. I hope this is a good gesture." After a moment, he put a hand on Konohamaru's shoulder and said, "Accepted. I do hope your change lasts. You could be a splendid ninja if you applied yourself." Wretched his arm free of Ebisu's hold, Konohamaru said, "Come, honorable grandson." He looked over at Naruto. "To think I thought you were cool," he said, turning and heading toward the academy while removing and discarding his goggles. Naruto and Ebisu watched him leave, with Ebisu's clones on either side of him as he went into the street. "Despite my initial hesitation with your influence, he was taking his studies a bit more seriously after encountering you. I do hope this doesn't revert him back." "Hopefully not," said Naruto. "I'm trying to tell myself it's for his own good." Ebisu stated, "It is. You made the right choice. Your mission to the wave has been all over the rumor mill among those with high enough rank to read the briefing. I assume your change is its work?" Naruto gave a nod. "Then I wish you the best in your endeavors. If you need a favor for this, I'm open. Anything reasonable, of course." Naruto paused for a moment. "Actually, I might cash that in now. You have any tips for rolling up a tree? Been trying to get that one down, and I've been having trouble with it." Ebisu grinned. Naruto grinned back and said, "First, do it on a smooth wall. Bark is much more rough on your skin. Second, there's a good trick to it. Most try to force their chakra to stick along their back and then into their feet by manually moving it along their skin. Instead, try to focus the needed chakra, and roll it in your network at the same rate you roll physically. If you get the timing down, it will stick for you. However, if you're looking to improve chakra control, I'd actually recommend doing it the manual way during training. Since it's the harder method, it'll improve your control even more." He turned, then turned back. "Makes sense. Thanks, Ebisu. Oh, almost forgot. Kon was trying to convince me to teach him the Kage Bunshin. I said no of course, but I wouldn't put it past him to try it on his own. I'd keep an eye on him in case he does." He paused for a second before adding, "Naruto." He then Shunshin ed away, leaving a cloud of smoke in his wake. "Of course. Thank you." Naruto pivoted and headed back toward the training area. It was odd. Before the wave, he had made a concerted effort to be accepted as a real person and a ninja. Now, it appeared that recognition arrived the instant he abandoned that in favor of truly applying himself as a ninja. He grinned. It was pleasant. "Naruto, would you stop?" Looking down at Sakura, who was upside down from where he was standing, Naruto stopped practicing. He had been weaving hand signals with a kunai between his fingers as he walked in a circle around the bridge's support arch. When he was upside down, as he was now, it became especially difficult, and his kunai had fallen spinning from his hands when he paused. Before it could hit his teammates, he grabbed it back out of the air. Sakura appeared even more irate at his almost fatal error. Naruto resumed his walk and remarked, "It's not like Kakashi. Sensei will be here anytime soon." It would be better to practice, Sakura? Sakura pointed an accusing finger at him and exclaimed, "You're just trying to show off, aren't you? Right, Sasuke?" Sasuke disregarded both of them. "See, he agrees." With his bangs falling back in his eyes, Naruto stepped back onto the bridge's floor. He scowled and used his finger to flick them away. Since he had seen so many other ninja wear their forehead protector on their bicep, he wanted to try it out. However, since his hair was in his eyes all the time, he was likely to go back to wearing it. "I don't think he said anything, Sakura. He didn't need to. Besides, you're just ignoring the original point." "I see my students are as friendly as ever," a fresh voice said. With his book open, knee up, and other foot hanging back and forth beneath him, Kakashi sat on top of the arch that Naruto had just been performing laps on. "Sensei?" asked Sakura. "You're not as late as you usually are. It's only been 30 minutes. Flipping a page of his book, Kakashi said jokingly, "I could go and return in an hour or two if you'd like." "What? No. It's just unusual," was Naruto's final word. Kakashi fell silently onto the wooden bridge after slipping off the arch. Naruto needed to learn how he accomplished that. "Well, today's a bit special. I hope you all enjoyed your vacation?" Naruto remarked, "I completed a lot of training. I saw." "Well done, Naruto. Now, we were going to simply go get a mission today, but the Hokage has requested to see our team. More specifically, you Naruto." "Why me?" Naruto asked, considering all the things he could have done incorrectly. Making Konohamaru angry was the closest thing he could think of, and he didn't think the old man even considered that. "Just some things regarding your recent developments." "Oh," Sakura said, "you mean his Hyo?" "Yes," Kakashi said, "that. Let's not say it out loud until we get to the Hokage's office, shall we?" Naruto frowned, and Team 7 followed. The trek to the tower had Naruto a bit on edge. He didn't think he was in trouble, it was more likely the Hokage just wanted to ask some questions about his bloodline. It wasn't every day one just popped up in a ninja, and they were quite valuable for a village. Still, even if he'd done nothing wrong, he couldn't quite help but feel like a kid getting called to the principal's office. Upon reaching the Hokage's office, they were allowed in by his clerk, and the door was shut behind them. The Hokage was smoking his pipe, his crystal ball in front of him on his desk. He seemed to sense Naruto's nervousness, as he sent him a reassuring smile. "Ah, Team 7. Excellent," he set down his pipe. "Reporting, Lord Hokage," Kakashi said, his book away. Hiruzen nodded at him. "Yes. First things first, your mission for today." He reached beneath his desk, pulling a scroll. "I believe a D rank should suffice. You will need to paint Mr. Akura's fence, as it's been getting rather chipped lately." Kakashi approached, taking the scroll, and putting it in his pocket. "Yes, Lord Hokage." Holding out a slip of chakra paper, he said, "Now, onto our second matter of business. I've heard you've made quite the discovery, Naruto." He opened a drawer and asked, "Would you mind being kind enough to demonstrate it for me?" Naruto came over and accepted it. He created a seal by concentrating his chakra. The paper split after only a second, getting wet on both sides before freezing over. In order to stick his fingers from the frozen paper, Naruto brought them to his mouth and blew hot air on them before giving them to the Hokage. He looked at them and said, "As I thought." Naruto took a step back to join the other members of Team 7. "And you discovered this a week ago?" Naruto replied, "Yeah. Thought I'd use the pay from the wave mission to pick up some supplies, and decided to grab some chakra paper on a whim." Naruto paused to consider whether he had told Iruka during dinner a few days prior. "I see. Have you told anyone other than Team 7? He asked. Not in his opinion. No, he didn't. He had been practicing the hide info technique, and if he did, he would most likely recall his sensei's response. "No, just Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi." "Sensei?" Hiruzen inquired, "And have either of you told anyone?" The words, "No sir," came from Sasuke, but Sakura appeared anxious. "Well, I think I might have told my mom. Is that okay, sir?" A hawk. Masked Anbu was by his Hokage's side in a blur of movement that didn't even stir up the wind or rustle the papers on his desk. "As long as she hasn't mentioned it to anyone else. Hawk, do visit the Haruno residence on Hana Street, and inquire to Ms. Haruno if she has mentioned Naruto's bloodline to anyone, would you?" "Yes, Lord Hokage," the Anbu said, vanishing as quietly as he had appeared. Sakura's worried expression caught the third's attention. Sakura appeared to calm down when her mother said, "Don't worry too much, Sakura. Even if your mother told, she's not in trouble, nor are you. I'd much rather that she has not, but things are not unsalvageable if she did." "Old man?" Naruto asked. Is there a problem? Potentially, if this can't be kept under wraps. The Sandaime said, picking his pipe back up and taking a few puffs. What do you know of the Hyden bloodline, Naruto? It combines wind and water elements together to form ice release, he said. Do you know where it originates? Mizu no Kuni, right? Correct. Do you know anything about the bloodline purges that occurred in Mizu no Kuni? Just that they happened. Not much else. All right, let me give you a little history lesson. For almost 2 centuries, Mizu no Kuni has been beset by civil wars. About 75 years ago, a popular movement known as the Bloodline Purges started in response to this never-ending flow of bloodshed. You see, many elite shinobi in Kirigakure were assigned to suppress rebellions on a regular basis. Kirigakure also had perhaps the most unique bloodlines of any ninja village, which meant that few of their regular shinobi were able to advance to higher ranks because the best of the best all had the advantage of a bloodline, which accelerated their development as ninja. Many people started to see bloodlines as being synonymous with bloodshed because these elite ninja were almost exclusively bloodline users and their primary responsibility was to quell dissent. As a result, many people blamed those who used bloodlines for almost a century of war. But that's just crazy, said Sakura. They weren't responsible, they were just all in the wrong position cause of circumstance. Yes, the Sandaime replied, if only they had heeded such counsel. Regretfully, a widespread notion that if the bloodlines could be eliminated, so could the civil wars, which did bring about almost 5 years of relative peace, but it was a mistake to believe that this would put an end to their conflict, as this most recent civil war has demonstrated. In any case, mob mentality is not the subject of today's conversation. With all of that said, let me ask you a question. What do you think Kirigakure thought of their daimyo banning the bloodlines of nearly all of their most elite shinobi? The government of Mizu no Kuni, despite the movement being one of the people, was unable to ignore one of the most unifying factors that had been present in their nation for the past century, so they capitalized for the sake of stability. Naruto remarked, I guess they wouldn't like it. Hiruzen laughed. An understatement, but yes, they did not like it. The Mizukage pleaded with his daimyo quite a bit, but was unable to dissuade him. The bloodline purges officially began, and many of Kiri's ninja were executed, while the rest fled with their families underground. However, the Mizukage did get his daimyo to approve a law that would soften the blow. If you are a shinobi village, what is your greatest threat? Other villages, suggested Sakura. Indeed. And if other villages learned that you were suddenly getting rid of all your bloodlines, what do you think they would do? Probably try to capture someone with a bloodline, so you could start your own clan, said Sakura. Correct. That, or choose the easier option of offering asylum to any clan under persecution. Given the large body of water between the mainland and Mizu no Kuni, and that most boats are regulated in their country, trying to capture a foreign missing ninja is a lot harder than it would be in other nations. A family or individual trying to smuggle themselves out, however, is much more doable. Now, if you were the leader of Kirigakure, you would like to prevent that, yes? Yeah. No reason to give potential enemies a bloodline, said Naruto. So, Mizu no Kuni passed a declaration against the capture or offer for asylum to any persecuted bloodline from any foreign government. To do so would incur open hostility from Kirigakure and Mizu no Kuni. Sakura questioned, you mean? Like a war? Perhaps, when the purges started, Kiri could not afford such a thing, but with their ongoing civil war, the severe deterioration of diplomatic relations, cutting off trade, and so forth are likely candidates. In addition, Konoha already has few allies, with Iwa and Kumo both being rivals, and having only recently gained our alliance with Suna. Kiri's current government is aligned with Iwa and Kumo, but the overthrow of their current government is almost certain to occur within the next year or two, so the future of Kirigakure's political affiliations is uncertain, so upsetting the rebel faction is not on our to-do list. We're left with you, Naruto. According to the records, you were born as an orphan during the Kyuubi attack and have no known parents or traceable ancestry. However, you have a last name that is known to USA Uzumaki, one of the oldest and closest clans to Konoha, and you suddenly have a bloodline that is exclusive to Mizu no Kuni. How would you feel if you were the leader of Kirigakure and you learned of this? That he was a stolen Yuki, Sasuke said prior to Naruto responding, and that everything on his file was a cover story. The Uzumaki lineage to make him look like he was closely tied to the village, the orphan status to look like his parents lived in the village and were just a casualty of the Kyuubi attack. Correct, Sasuke. If Mizu no Kuni knew the truth of Naruto's bloodline, they would likely demand him be handed over at once. Don't worry in that instance, though, Naruto. I would not trade you for political relations with a nation barely able to keep itself together for more than 20 years at a time. Naruto said, Thanks, Lord Hokage. So, am I a Yuki? With his eyes closed and thoughtful, the Hokage took a few puffs from his pipe. He had worn the same expression almost 2 years prior when Naruto had last questioned him about his ancestry. We don't know, he said, but I can tell you that Konoha did not steal you or your parents from Mizu no Kuni. During my first reign as Hokage, plans were made for what we would do if we wanted a bloodline from Kiri. It was a mock scenario, though, and it wasn't a green dot lit mission. It was decided that the person with the Futen Keke Genkai would be a much more desirable target than any other bloodline, as it would have a higher chance of being passed down with our shinobi, given that part of boil release is Kaiden nature. In fact, Hayaten was near the bottom of the list because futon nature is so uncommon in Konoha. I have a team of Anbu on their way to Nami no Kuni right now to get a DNA sample from the corpse of the Yuki clan member your team fought so we can compare it with your own DNA. If you are a Yuki, your parents must have been using a false name to avoid Konoha giving them to Kiri. If not, well, I doubt it would matter because Kiri wouldn't believe the truth anyhow, let alone if we said we had no idea how a bloodline native to Mizu no Kuni appeared in a, supposedly, non-Yuki ninja. So if I'm not, then how did I get it? The Hokage looked up as Hawk reappeared next to him. We have a few working theories in that scenario, each more unlikely than the last. But before we go wasting time and resources, let us get the obvious answer, whether you're a Yuki, out of the way first. She claims to have not mentioned it to any known acquaintance, Lord Hokage. I informed her of the information's ranking, and her responsibility to keep it, Hawk said. The third nodded. Thank you, Hawk. You're dismissed, Hawk bowed, and vanished again. Sakura said, ranking, Lord Hokage. Quite. Given the sensitivity of the situation, the knowledge of Naruto's bloodline is now an irranked village secret until further notice. Revealing this information to others is, therefore, a punishable offense. So, Naruto replied, I'm guessing that means I can't use my bloodline, then. That's not what I said, the Hokage said. Naruto became animated, saying, your lineage makes you an extremely valuable asset to the village, on par with Sasuke and his Sharingan, here, since your descendants have the ability to start a clan. Not only would we be throwing away a valuable asset by not allowing you to use it, but we would also be unnecessarily restricting your capabilities as a ninja in life, or death situations. Furthermore, if you don't begin researching your bloodline, you will be wasting time that could have been used to advance your bloodline for both you and your offspring. A future clan will require secret methods, exercises, and so forth, or they will all be stumbling in the dark. So, does that mean I can? Somewhat, we're walking a tightrope here, Naruto. We need to control risks as much as possible. You are cleared to use your bloodline in emergency circumstances, at your Jonin Sensei or current commander's discretion, or on missions that I or any other acting Hokage have cleared. If used against an enemy combatant, I implore you to secure the kill against him or her, that the information of your bloodline might not get out. Otherwise, your use of it, even in your daily training, is forbidden. Then how am I supposed to get good enough at it to use it? I'm currently looking into solutions. It is likely that we will need to give you a private location and instructor. But Naruto, I must stress the importance of your minimal use of this bloodline during these next few months, no matter how tempting it may be. The Chunin exams are approaching, meaning Konoha will be hosting a variety of ninja, all from different villages. We can enforce the secret on our own ninja if they see you do it, but not those in other villages. So do be careful. Naruto exclaimed, will do, old man, before Sakura gave him a side of the head slap. Naruto, be more respectful. This is the Hokage, and he's talking about something super important. On that note, Lord Hokage, are we dismissed? Kakashi asked. Kakashi nodded and gave Sasuke their mission scroll, saying, you are. Expect a messenger to be in touch with you soon, regarding training, Naruto. Sasuke nodded as Team 7 slowly left the room. Sasuke, you lead the team to the Akura residence to paint that fence. I'll be joining you shortly. As Kakashi waited for the sound of his team's footsteps to diminish down the stairs, the Hokage smoked his pipe. So is the Anbu squad on the way to Nami no Kuni real, or not? It is. Truth be told, Naruto could actually have Yuki blood, on either Kushina's or Minato's side. We know Minato's parents lived in Konoha. However, his grandparents are somewhat vague. It is believed they immigrated from a coastal village on the border of Kawa no Kuni and Kei's no Kuni, hence his futon nature, but it's not certain. Kushina's parents are a complete mystery, as most of the information on them was destroyed alongside Uzushiogakure. Do you remember her or Minato saying anything about them? Kakashi paused for a moment. If I'm remembering right, and that is an if, I think Minato. Sensei once said she got her red hair from her father. That would imply her mother had a different hair color, and so maybe wasn't an Uzumaki. Though, I could be remembering that wrong, and he could have said, hairstyle, instead of hair color. The Sandame did not respond to this. Then came, Sir, Kakashi, if I may? The Sandame said, Yes, Kakashi? With a thoughtful thought, the Hokage stood looking out the window and back to Kakashi. I have a recommendation. You could reveal his parentage, Lord Hokage. I've given that thought as well, and I don't deny myself tempted by the option. Revealing him as Kushina and Minato's son would save much effort, and allow us to go public with his bloodline, as it would be easily verifiable his parents are not Yuki. But, it would come at the price of putting a target on young Naruto's back. Even with the change of heart you described, the boy remains quite the headache, politically if not socially. Konoha has been needing to show its ninja's quality. Kakashi continued, we lost last generation's crop of potential S-tier ninja with Shisui's death and Itachi's defection. A lot of A-tiers went down the drain in the Kyuubi attack and the Uchiha massacre as well. No such talents have revealed themselves yet in this latest generation, on paper at least. We know Naruto will likely be Heir S rank, given his Jinchuriki status, but the world doesn't know that. If we revealed we had the fourth son, and that he had a bloodline, and that he was a Jinchuriki, that would be a definitive statement. You're normally not so impersonal, Kakashi. Do I sense a desire to connect with the boy on his heritage? With a smile, the Hokage closed his eyes and said, just saying what I believe is best for the village, Lord Hokage. Kakashi bowed and walked out of the room, leaving Hiruzen to gaze out the window over the village he was protecting. Of course. Rest assured, I am giving it thought. Dismissed. In an attempt to remove the paint stain from his sleeve, Naruto used his tongue to dab at his thumb. Today, of all days, he naturally chose to don one of his long, sleeved shirts. The weather wasn't even that cold. With a sigh, he led his group through the streets to the training area. His sensei did say that he would check on the three of them during the course of the week's training. As he passed a pair of Chunin from Kumo, who was probably on a delivery or diplomatic mission, Naruto tensed up a bit. With the exception of his age group, Naruto never had to worry about hiding the S-ranked secret of his Jinchuriki status because the majority of the villagers were already aware of it. He now had the feeling that if he even went near a foreign ninja, a bomb would detonate. A hand was placed on his shoulder by Kakashi. He whispered in his ear, calm down. Naruto let the tension leave his body and exhaled as he said, you deal in the business of secret keeping, now that you're a ninja. You're gonna have to learn how to look like you don't have any secrets to keep. Instead, he concentrated on his sandals, and as they approached the training grounds, the road beneath them gradually changed from cobblestone to dirt. Eventually, with the little river glistening in the midday sun, the three recognizable stumps of Training Ground 3 emerged. There were shuriken and kunai scattered on one of the nearby trees. The grounds looked as if they had been used recently. They stopped, and Naruto rolled his shoulders slightly. Then Kakashi said, alright. I suppose we should go ahead and get started. Sakura, do you still have that scroll from last week? Oh, sorry sensei, I forgot it at home. Do you want me to go get it? No, I'd like to have as much time with you three as possible before we break for today. I'd send a clone to get it myself, but in the interest of not scaring your mother any more than she likely has been today, let's just have you bring it next meeting. Sound good? Sakura gave a nod. On the topic of clones, 3 Kage Bunshin materialized beside Kakashi, none of them wearing a seal. Kakashi pulled out his book and said, go ahead and pair with one of my clones, each of you, and we'll see how well you've spent your week. Hey! Sakura yelled, how come all of us have to work, and the real you gets to just lounge around? Because assessing you one by one would be time wasting, and having the real me train one of you while the others get shadow clones would be favoritism. And we wouldn't want that, would we? Kakashi replied with a grin on his face. He waved and said, take care, before vanishing into the trees. While the other two went off to practice in their separate areas, Naruto approached a clone. The clone inquired, so, Naruto, how did this week's training go? Naruto took out his training regimen scroll and threw it to his sensei. He went over it. You've been busy. I see most of your time has been devoted to chakra control as well. Good. I'm glad you're persisting in taking your training seriously. I've been trying to work hard for our next mission. I don't want a repeat of the wave. Naruto thanked Kakashi, who nodded. Naruto went to the closest tree, stepped onto it without running, and then did a few lazy cartwheels and handsprings up. Well, I was just going to test your chakra control, but seeing as you went above and beyond my expectations for your training, let's run down your list, shall we? How's your control? Naruto said. Using Ebisu's trick, he stopped at a low branch and rolled backwards down it. He lightly kicked off, just before reaching the bottom, and his sensei gave him mock applause. Well done. Rolling manually is still out of my reach. Naruto said, I got a Tokubetsu Jonin to show me the trick behind it, where you roll the chakra in your coils, but doing it the regular way is still tough. I didn't expect you to get that part down. I would have been pleasantly surprised if you could have even done one exercise in the scroll, let alone all of them. You've been working hard, Naruto. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, grinning. Now, it says here you've also been working on kunai sparring? Yeah. With clones. I think I've got the basics of knife combat down, but I've been having some trouble with integrating kicks and with my right high guard. Show me your stance. Naruto flicked out a kunai, settling into his improvised stance with his left hand forward, and his right close to the chest. Kakashi circled him, examining. Alright. Go ahead and keep your legs closer together. Your stance is very wide. In hand-to-hand fighting, that's okay, since a grounded stance helps strength. With a kunai, you don't need strength, you have instant lethality. That means mobility is more important, and keeping the legs closer will help with your springiness. Naruto adjusted. I assume the front hand is for grabbing? That's effective and easy to learn for a beginner. Good instincts, Naruto. As for your right guard, there's a few good ways to help that. I want you to practice twirling your kunai from a front grip to an ice pick grip. Ice pick? After nodding, Naruto said, reverse grip. That was a new name for it to him. Drill that until it's nearly instinctual. Then, when you raise your guard, you can flip the knife so it's facing them instead of you. Oftentimes, if you're quick and precise enough, you can aim your kunai for their oncoming fist. Go ahead and try it now. A little taken aback, Naruto blinked before flipping his kunai into a reverse grip. Naruto became more defensive as Kakashi swung a backfist in his direction. As the kunai struck Kakashi's glove's metal plate, it gave a brief chink. Good, again, was Kakashi's response, chink. One more, chink. Good, Kakashi said. Naruto flipped the kunai back around, falling back into stance with a smile. He liked that. He liked that quite a bit. He immediately wanted to start practicing flipping the kunai, instead of having it in reverse grip to start. Now kicks, Kakashi said. Go ahead and show me how you kick. Naruto bounced a bit on his heels, before lifting his lead leg, and swinging it in a roundhouse. Kakashi brought up a forearm, blocking it with little trouble. Naruto repeated with his rear leg. This one, Kakashi simply leaned back from, swatting it forward as it went, throwing Naruto a little off balance. Naruto grimaced. It was awkward trying to generate power with his feet closer together like that. Right, Kakashi said. Did you learn roundhouses in the academy style? Naruto nodded. That makes sense. Roundhouses are your big glory kicks, and they're probably the most damaging strike a human can throw, other than spinning roundhouses. But, like I said before, you don't need so much power. You have a knife. So what should I be throwing? Naruto bounced a little and raised his leg in an arc toward his sensei. Still throw roundhouses when you see the opportunity, but your bread and butter kicks should be different. Show me your side kick. Kakashi just gave it a swat. Naruto looked down at his feet and raised his lead knee before snapping it forward to his sensei's body. Not like that. Lift the knee up first. Really chamber it in close to the body, then shoot it forward. That straight line is where the effectiveness of a side kick comes. When Kakashi saw it, Naruto smiled. It didn't feel nearly as uncomfortable, and it has a punch. Good form. Make sure to turn on your back foot when you stab that leg forward, and try to strike with the ball of your foot. The smaller the surface area you're striking with, the better, unless you're trying to push them away. Again. Naruto raised his knee and pushed his leg forward. Kakashi caught it again. Good. Eyes on me when you throw it. Look over the shoulder, not below it. One more. Naruto continued to throw. Good. Side kicks are a great kick for distance management and disrupting an enemy that is charging forward. Its weakness is non-linear movement. As you're throwing everything in a straight line, you leave your flanks open, so be careful of your sides when you use it. Do you know how to throw leg kicks? Naruto responded, no, I've never heard of them. Kakashi sank into a position. It's a kick that targets your opponent's thigh muscle or their calf muscle. Both are good places to hit, but the thigh is typically easier to hit. Kakashi just grinned and said, isn't that a bit ineffective? Going for their legs? Naruto shrugged and slightly widened his stance, leaving his legs bare, saying, let me show you. You must understand what it's like to take one, anyhow. Kakashi slapped Naruto's left thigh with his shin after whipping his hip around with practiced ease. Naruto instantly fell, clutching his leg with both hands despite his best efforts to stay balanced. How? Why? That was unbelievably painful. With his teeth clenched, Naruto asked, "Why do you kick me so hard?" The pulse in his thigh was palpable. "I didn't," Kakashi replied, extending a hand to Naruto, with an angry look. "You could see it coming, couldn't you? I didn't throw it with nearly my highest strength or speed. That was light, but that's the power of a leg kick. It hits your opponent's physiology. You're targeting all that soft muscle and nerves. On top of that, the legs carry all the weight of the body. Not only does that add to the pain, as the muscles buckle under your weight, but it also disrupts your opponent's footwork. How easy is it for you to bounce around on that, right now?" Naruto had no desire to try. Leg kicks can leave bruises that last for months. It takes away mobility and builds up damage very quickly. 3 good ones to the thigh can take away someone's ability to even stand. With enough practice, they can become the bread and butter of your kicking game. You like it when you can grab your opponent, right? Cause that always leads to a hit with the knife. What if you could just send them to the ground with a leg kick? That's also always a kill if you have a kunai, and it's far cleaner than grabbing. Naruto continued to rub his thigh. "So how do I throw them?" He turned his hip slowly, lifting his leg, then paused in front of Naruto's thigh, saying, "First, how to defend them. A lot of people who have never seen them will instinctively try to catch or block a low kick with their hands. Don't. That's a fatal mistake that leaves your body and head open. When someone tries to go for a low kick." Naruto complied, while Kakashi and his shins tapped together. "That seems like it would hurt." "It will. But it'll hurt far less than getting hit in the thigh. When you take enough of them, you start to become conditioned. Added to that, you might even break your opponent's shin on your shin, since yours has your thigh behind it, and theirs doesn't. Life lesson of the day, drink your milk." "Right." Kakashi whipped a leg kick towards Naruto's thigh, and without being instructed, Naruto dropped back into his stance. Their shins collided as Naruto raised his knee. He hissed. "Yes, that was painful. Okay." Naruto brought his leg around and it thudded against Kakashi's pants. "Good. Now throwing them. Take a small step with your lead leg, then turn your hip and swing your rear leg to their thigh. You want to chop down on the thigh, not up." He remained motionless. Naruto adjusted, already sensing the extra punch from his form, saying, "Decent, but not great. Turn on your front foot, like you would a roundhouse kick. Also, don't keep your leg extended. You want to whip the shin out at the last second." He struck Kakashi's thigh with his shin. "Good. Don't drop your right hand when you throw it. And don't get addicted to the sound either. The ones that make no noise are the ones that hurt the most." "One more." Naruto agreed. "Good. Practice those. Get good enough at using them that you can throw them off your footwork, instead of just standing." He looked at the list again. "I see you've also been practicing senbon throwing. I assume that Hunter Nin left his mark on you." Naruto turned to reveal his poison pouch with the 6 senbon needles protruding from it. "Not because of him. I didn't want to try them, originally, since they need a lot of practice before you can use them effectively. Got them for poison instead. Because he would be on a mission today. Naruto had filled them out yesterday. Never could be too prepared. The front 3 had his monitor lizard poison, and the other 3 had his paralytic. I saw that. Poisons are a good tool to have. I don't carry any myself, but they're potent on the field. I'd mix up throwing regular senbon as well, and feign them like they're poison. If you establish in a fight that your only poison weapon is senbon, then every senbon becomes poison, if you catch my meaning. That can make your opponents more cautious of them, and can lead to movement control and setups." Naruto took a moment to marvel at just how much his sensei knew. These were things that would take days or weeks of training for him to realize, and Kakashi Sensei was numbering them off with practiced ease at a moment's glance. The gap between the two of them. He wanted to scale that, to be able to recognize things like Kakashi could. He wanted to be that effective. "Alright. Are you done with that scroll?" Kakashi asked. He was given the tree climbing scroll by Naruto. "Thank you. The real me is going to drop by your house later today to give you your next chakra exercise. Remember during the fight with Zabuza, when we were stood on the water?" "Oh, yeah. That didn't even register in my mind that you were doing that. Was so distracted with Zabuza. It's considered the next step in chakra control, after tree climbing. I'll give you a scroll detailing the exercise. I want you to practice in your free time. If you want, you can master rolling up the tree first before you tackle it." Naruto gave a nod. "I've taken to sparring while on trees to improve chakra control. Should I switch to sparring on the water, once I get that down?" "Practice both. You never know when you need to be able to fight on a different surface. With all that said, I believe my other clones are done with their assessments, meaning it's time for teamwork exercises." Naruto smiled and nodded. He was eagerly anticipating his next training session with simply everything he would have to work on. His chakra control, sparring, and Hayatan. Everything just appeared to be beginning to fit together. Genin Naruto Uzumaki. As the Jonin and her team drew closer, Naruto combed the white towel through his hair and looked up. Being one of the few with a river or other water source, Training Ground 3 was used even though it wasn't very well liked. Because of this, people who needed water to practice here, whether it was Suiden ninjutsu or his current exercise of water walking, frequently came here. During his last week here, Naruto had observed some Genin and Shunin practicing, but he typically kept his distance from them, and vice versa. This kunoichi had therefore caught him off guard. Yes? He inquired. She took a scroll out of her pocket and said, "From Lord Hokage." After wiping his hand on his towel, Naruto accepted it. It was red, thin, and small, bearing the Hokage's insignia. Before noticing her team, he swung the towel over his shirtless shoulder and said, "Thanks. Oh, what's up guys?" 3 of his fellow academy students, Shino, Kiba, and Hinata, stood behind their Jonin sensei. While Kiba had his hands behind his head and a loud smile on his face, Hinata appeared to be sticking her fingers together and staring down at her feet with a red face. Shino was as serene and eerie as ever. Kiba yelled, "You're a hard guy to find, Naruto. Sensei said we needed practice tracking, but this one was just dumb. Took us most of the afternoon to find you." According to Naruto, tracking practice? A lot of the time. Their Jonin sensei replied, "D. ranks are just mindless manual labor. But, when possible, D ranks in which you could apply certain skills to go to certain teams. For a tracking and reconnaissance team like mine, hand deliveries to people who don't stay in one place are perfect." That was understandable, since it allowed you to show off your prowess in tracking, search and destroy, ambushes, and other skills. Naruto surmised that this was the reason why capturing Tora was such a popular mission. "Still wearing that stupid orange I see. Why are you all wet?" asked Kiba. Naruto looked at his orange bathing suit. Since there was no reason to believe he would require a covert swimsuit, he had forgotten to purchase a new one. He would still expect Kiba to notice his new attire dangling from the tree branch near the river. Their Jonin sensei gave them a startled look when they said, "Oh, chakra control practice." His gaze first shifted to the river and then to Naruto's damp hair. Kiba said, "Hey, you're still on baby stuff like chakra control practice? I'll have you know that I've already mastered 3 clan jutsus since I've got out of the academy. And one is a C rank." Naruto wanted to tell Kiba that he had a bloodline and that he could perform a B-ranked forbidden technique, but he refrained. In addition to being an A-ranked secret, revealing either would be aiding a possible adversary, and the Chunin exams were coming up. As if Kiba were now assisting him, and Naruto assumed that not boasting would be the mature thing to do. Kiba gave Naruto a tche and a smirk when he said, "Glad to hear it, Kiba. Hope you use them well in the field." He unfolded the scroll. Naruto Uzumaki, Genin. Regarding your recent discovery, you are asked to come to the Hokage's office this Friday at 6:30 a.m. with the presence of an authorized instructor. You are now permitted to use Training Grounds number 51. Acknowledge. Hiruzen Sarutobi. The phrase, Training Grounds 50.1, was unfamiliar to Naruto. He was aware that Konoha had only 50. Rerolling the scroll, he almost instinctively stuffed it in his swimsuit pocket, but then remembered they were wet and decided to just hold it. "Thank you, Miss Yuhi Kurenai." Finally, Naruto said, "Miss Kurenai." He got up and stretched a little. Careful not to wrinkle the Chunin exam application his sensei had given him yesterday, he walked up to the branch with his clothes, slung his shirt over his head, and tucked the scroll into the pocket of his cargo pants. Even though he had 2 weeks before the exams, he still planned to stop by the tower and drop it off today. Careful not to stab himself on the senbon sticking out of his damp sheath, he folded his cargo pants and swung them over his other shoulders. "Well," Kiba said. "What's the thing say?" "Kiba," Kurenai said. "Gnome isn't part of our mission. It's time to go." "Ah, come on, it's no big deal. What does the Hokage want with a loser like him?" Naruto turned to face the Jonin and said, "Kiba, stop upsetting our client, and drop it." Did she know? She likely had the clearance, since it was an A-ranked secret. Naruto reached into his equipment pouch and said, "It's okay," as Kiba said, "the information isn't a big deal." Kurenai gave him a stern look when he said that. She was aware of it. "It's not actually from the Hokage," Naruto stated while removing his ID. Kiba took a single glance at the card before he started laughing. "Just the tower's administration desk. They want me to retake my ID photo this Friday. I may have dressed in clown makeup for my first one," he said, pulling the card from his wallet. "Ah, Still the idiot. Naruto. I'd have thought lucking out with becoming a genin might have made you a little more serious about being a ninja, but I guess not. Yeah, I guess not, Kiba, Naruto said, putting his card back in his wallet. Hinata stood up and said, Kiba. I don't think that's very nice, insulting Naruto like that. Oh, Hinata, hurry up, I'm just making jokes. In addition, it's Naruto. You remember how I described him on the way here, sensei? While Kurenai was staring up and down at Naruto as though seeking something deeper, Kiba said, bursting into another round of laughter. You did? She replied. Did you arrive on time for that photo, Genin Uzumaki? It will work. Once more, thank you, Kurenai. Kiba wiped a tear from his eye as Naruto pulled the scroll back from the grass and headed back down the road to the village proper. Dude, I hope it's him if I have to fight someone in the Chunin examsa, that is, if his sensei was stupid enough to let him in, Kiba exclaimed. As Kiba gave Shino a startled look, Shino remarked, I'd not underestimate him. I believe there's more to Naruto than meets the eye. Hurry up, Naruto. Take a vacation. The guy's talentless, right sensei? Kurenai said nothing, merely watching Naruto's back with an appraising look as he walked back down the road. Naruto glanced up the road towards the village, spotting the telltale tuft of brown hair sprouting off Konohamaru's head. What was he doing out here all alone? No, not alone. He was walking with two kids who Naruto did not recognize, perhaps fellow academy students. Naruto smiled, running after them. Hey, Konohamaru. Kon turned, spotting Naruto, before frowning. So it's you, huh? He said, turning up his nose. You're not still mad about the thing with Ebisu, are you? That was 2 weeks ago, Naruto said with a smile. After the academy, Ebisu made me train all day. For the remainder of the week, I was in pain. With his arms folded and his eyes turned away, he spoke. In the field, a sore body is now a healthy body, Kon. Who are your pals? A liar like you shouldn't be known, Kon said. I'm Moegi. I'm Udon. Nice to meet you, Moegi, Udon. You go to the academy with Kon, here? Hey. Waving his arms, Konohamaru yelled, don't just go introduce yourself to him. I told you about this guy, and he sold me out to Ebisu, sensei. Udon adjusted his glasses and said, I dunno, I think he's a pretty nice guy. He hides behind a friendly face, which is why, he is, in fact, a malevolent liar. Naruto raised a brow in return, still grinning, as Konohamaru pointed an accusing finger at him. All right. Naruto replied, Kon, I apologize profusely for preventing you from avoiding your obligations. Could you please forgive me? Konohamaru folded his arms. I suppose, he said, thank you Kon, now. If you teach me your Kage Bunshin, he said, grinning avaricious. Are you still using that? There aren't many situations in which you can use it at the moment, having no ninja skills and all. Hey, as you may know, Konohamaru said, I was harassed by a man wearing makeup and an odd headband just last week. If I had Kage Bunshin, I totally could have beat him up. That's exactly why I wouldn't trust you with Kage Bunshin, Naruto said idly, cause you'd go around trying to use it to beat people up. Konohamaru started shouting something, but Naruto's head was elsewhere. Someone threatened the kid? And a foreign ninja, no less. That was gutsy, considering who Konohamaru was, or rather, who his grandfather was. Must have been a foreign genin here for the Chunin exams, who didn't know who Kon was. Hey, Kon, Naruto said, interrupting whatever tirade he was on, listen, I can't teach you Kage Bunshin, since I've yet to hear any announcements about it no longer being, illegal to teach. But, maybe I can teach you something else. Perhaps the replacement technique would bide him over. Konohamaru said, depends on how cool it is. Jutsus aren't really about how cool they are, Kon. Easy for you to say. You most likely. The wisp of smoke was the first thing Naruto noticed. With the hearth thudding, he grabbed Kon and Udon, who were closer to him, and immediately pulled them behind him. Both of them fell to the ground, with Kon yelling in outrage. Naruto started to move in Moegi's direction, but the figure was already behind her, his shunshin complete, so he drew a kunai, taking in as much information as he could. Aim ninja, 2 umbrellas on the back, a face mask, a cloak, and a face mask, which could conceal something. He appeared a little taken aback by Naruto's quick reaction. Hey, what? Konohamaru said, still looking up at Naruto, not having even noticed the man. Who are you? Naruto said in what he hoped was a strong voice. What he hostile? He just performed a jutsu near a lone group in the middle of nowhere. Was Naruto just overreacting? adrenaline was stampeding over any embarrassment as he looked the man in the eyes. He. The man chuckled, before swiping up Moegi, and jumped into the trees. Naruto started. Dang it, he should have expected that. Did he want him to follow? He would have just taken her under his nose if he didn't, right? Wait, no, what if that was a ploy? What if he was a Jonin? What if he was in the trees waiting to pick off their group one by one? It was happening again. He was frozen against the demon brothers again. He was helpless against Haku again. Should he follow? Should he scan the surroundings first? Should he tell someone? What if he got Moegi killed? What if he killed her because Naruto sent for reinforcements? He needed answers. He needed someone to tell him what to do. How was he supposed to know what to do? What if all his training didn't matter? What if he died? He couldn't go out there, he had to run. Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Naruto inhaled. What was he thinking? He had two terrified children standing next to him, and they were looking to him for entertainment. More than that, he had a terrified young girl in the arms of a dangerous shinobi who was depending on him. Kon, Naruto said in a voice so strong that he was taken aback. Now, return to the village. You too. Find the closest leaf shinobi and explain the situation to him. Boss, Leave! Naruto yelled, tossed aside his towel and swim trunks, and fled across the trees after the man. Consider, Naruto said, this is what you have been working toward. Benefits and drawbacks. What have I got? Naruto started slicing the kunai across the bark as he went, anticipating reinforcements, hoping that this would clear the way for whoever was going to follow him. What else? Advantage of stealth. Though not from where, he is aware of my approach. I am able to surprise him. Hundreds of allied shinobi are close by, and I'm fighting on my own territory. He must be aware that he is going to be swarmed, which implies that he is either running out of time for whatever he intends to do with this or that he is leaving the country. A hostage was one of his advantages. If he didn't want Moegi or something else, he wouldn't take one mindlessly. However, the Hokage's grandson is right there, so why not target him? Pay attention, Naruto. What else? Unknown skill set, but I share that with him. He's older and probably more seasoned. However, this might be a genin for the Chunin tests. You can't be certain either way. Naruto stopped when he saw something in the clearing ahead and made a hand seal out of anxiety. He whispered, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. The clone silently materialized beside him, demonstrating his training in chakra control, and he nodded at it. A little before the clearing's front, the clone hid behind a tree trunk, and Naruto started to circle the clearing, taking in as much information as he could, his heart thumping all the way. Moegi was bound and tied to a tree with ninja wire, which was held in place by kunai in the tree. The wire didn't wrap around, so he couldn't sneak up to untie it from behind the tree's cover. Clever. Naruto doubted it was that simple. Perhaps this was a clone of some sort, or some other subversion? He didn't know for sure, but he should be ready if it was. Naruto looked up at the sky. Dang. The sun was angled down towards the man. If Naruto approached from behind and above, the best spot for ambushes, his shadow would give him away, so he had to approach simply from behind on the ground. Still, the kidnapper in question stood in front of her, a hand on his hip, not even looking towards the front of the clearing, where his enemies might be approaching. Take away his advantages, capitalize on my own, was Naruto's thought as he fell silently to the forest floor. He needed to get the man away from Moegi because that was the biggest weapon he had in this situation that Naruto was aware of. If he could threaten her, he was in trouble because he was definitely not going to let an academy student die before himself. However, how could he do that? Get his focus elsewhere. As the real you unties Moegi, send the first clone down as a diversion. Wait a minute, a clone releases her. Don't risk giving away your position if you don't need to. Naruto motioned the clone on the other end of the clearing to drop down on his target, and the clone nodded. Naruto then made another soundless move while climbing a tree and dragging a handful of shurikena, one to distract the man, one to free Moegi, and one to try to drive the man away from ambush cover in case something went wrong with Moegi, or to take him down once he had her out of there. As he watched the man, Naruto's hands were sweating against the metal of his kunai. Should he use his poison? No, he needed them to kill or deter right away. It wouldn't work as a deterrent from Moegi as well as a handful of shuriken unless the man knew his senbon were poison, which was unlikely, and he couldn't risk taking his Fuma shuriken out of his scroll either. Too much noise from the unsealing. Naruto calmed himself with a breath before counting down to the clone at the far side of the clearing. Here we go. 3, 2. Hey, freak. Naruto was gonna kill Konohamaru if he got out of this. Oh. That shinobi from earlier was what I anticipated. I got a little runt and his sidekick instead. As Naruto's clone at the far end of the clearing leapt between Konohamaru and Udon and the kidnapper, the man raised a kunai to Moegi's neck. Kon! You're back! The clone bellowed. Hey boss! We! Yelled Kon. Shish! The clone said, eyes on the man in front of him. Naruto mentally cursed. If Kon was here, that meant he wasn't getting backup from the village. There goes one of his advantages. And the kidnapper just got 2 more in return, in the form of 2 more potential hostages, and 2 more people Naruto had to worry about him targeting if it came down to a fight. There you are. Stay put, the man said. The brat is dead if you do. I want the scroll of seals from the Hokage. The clone could not risk anything more, so he signed to his other clone to get Moegi out while he stood ready with his shuriken, in case he needed them. The man was keeping his eyes on the clone, who he believed to be the only threat in the clearing. Naruto could use that. He signaled his clone to keep the man talking, and all Naruto received in return was a flick of the eyes in his direction. The clone said, I've already sent word to the village, adding, you're in a hostile village with no allies and 1 hostage. You'll soon be inundated with enemy shinobi. You won't be immediately killed when they get there if you drop the kunai and let her go now. Naruto watched the other clone soundlessly slip around the tree, nervous, before reshifting his gaze to the man. He should keep his eyes on the enemy, and trust his clone. Not focusing on the enemy could let him miss something. Still, Naruto felt a bead of sweat roll down his cheek, as though his clone would mess up if he wasn't watching him. You're bluffing, the man said. There was no one to send, so you were all alone in that clearing. Furthermore, as if a genin like you could promise what your superiors are capable of. Right now. Please scroll. As the clone slid next to him, holding Moegi in his arms and placing a hand on her mouth, Naruto felt himself calm down and exhale in relief. Naruto signed, get her out, inform the village. The clone nodded and took off in the trees as he looked back down at the clearing, a thought forming in his mind. He silently created another clone, this one weaving the henge's hand signs as soon as it was created, before it transformed into Moegi, dropped back down, and wrapped the bindings around itself as slowly and silently as it could. Despite his anxiety, Naruto felt a sense of accomplishment because he now had an advantage the man was unaware of. The clone said, you can't afford to call it, even if I'm bluffing. Even if things don't work out for me, what do you gain from this? 4 dead leaf citizens, and a squad of elite Anbu tracking you all the way back to AIM. Naruto wiped the sweat from his forehead. He still needed to take the guy down and get Kon and Udon out of here. He already proved he could sneak up on the guy. Maybe he cloud slip behind him and take him out. Wait, what if that was a ploy, and the man knew he was there? No, he wouldn't give away a hostage like that for nothing in return, if he knew. I can assure you with certainty that I would make it back to AIM far before they found your corpses, the man said. Naruto slipped a poisoned senbon out of his wet sheath. The asphyxiate to the man's neck, then a kunai to follow. The Moegi clone could back him up if things went south. Wait, no, if this guy was here for the Chunin exams, he had a team with him. He may not be working alone. He should capture him. Paralytic it was then. Having seen your speed a second ago, the clone said, I can assure you with certainty that they'll get to you before you get to another country. I'll say again, drop the kunai and release the girl. Naruto slipped down the tree, approaching low and slow, paralytic senbon in one hand, kunai in the other. He held his breath as he approached, his pulse drumming in his head, anxiety coursing through his veins. I'll say again, get me the scroll. Naruto's senbon slipped into the back of the man's neck, as Naruto rushed to immediately put the kunai under his throat. What did he do now? He still had the kunai, he had to make sure to force all his advantages away. That person is paralyzed. You lose all significant muscle movement after 20 seconds. You can no longer speak after the age of 30. Drop the kunai. Nah. The man was interrupted as the Moegi clone took this moment to drop the henge, breaking through the bonds in a split second, before grabbing the kidnapper's wrist, which was far too slow at this point to stop him. He slipped a second kunai under his chin. The pair forced the man to his knees, the real Naruto now holding his other wrist and fingers with his free hand, just in case he could perform one-handed seals, as rare as they were. Not a word. You have 2 kunai to your throat. They enter your neck through any movement, anything that might seem like jutsu, or a chakra slip through your coils. You're finished. Drop the kunai. The man obeyed, clattering the kunai on the grass below as his fingers twitched. After shouting to his other clone by Konohamaru and Udon, get them out of here, Naruto nodded and, much to Konohamaru's dismay, picked them both up before heading into the woods. Naruto paused the kunai he almost slipped into the man's throat as he realized he had just heard his own name. N. Naruto, the man said in a very strained voice, his teeth clenched. How are you aware of my name? Naruto uttered those words. My name is Ir. Ruka. H. Henge. Avoid dropping it. With his mind racing as fast as it could, Naruto said, no chakra. Was it a ruse? He had only a little time left before the man's talking ability was finished. Consider this. What did Iruka say to me when I received my first headband? O.Ope. N your E. EY. The man couldn't finish the sentence, but Naruto let the kunai off his throat, his clone dispelling. He let go of the man's wrist, which he now realized had been keeping the man kneeling, since Iruka dropped to the floor as soon as he let go. Even paralyzed, however, his chakra still worked. The illusion dispelled, revealing his academy instructor. Naruto slipped open a pocket on his cargo pants, opening his travel scroll and unsealing his paralytic antidote, uncorking it and slipping it down his sensei's throat. A dozen seconds passed, Naruto waiting with bated breath in the meantime. What if the antidote didn't work? But Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as Iruka began coughing. Good Kami, Iruka-sensei. Then Naruto said, what are you doing? How many times did I threaten to toss a shuriken at the back of your head in the final moments? Are you okay? Can you move? Iruka groggily said, IT's company coming back. He tried to sit up, but it was still a little out of reach. Man, got pins and needles all over my body, he said. Where did you find Naruto? Store of equipment. One of Suna's paralytics, Naruto uttered, his heart rate at last lowering as his body's adrenaline slowed its pace. With his eyes squeezed shut, he said, yeah, that explains it. What on earth were you doing, sensei? A test. He suggested that you take the Chunin exams, Kakashi, he said. I wanted to confirm that you were prepared. Hokage gave me a mission specifically for it. He had some difficulty sitting up on his arms, but then Naruto's situation began to come together. The man kept his back to the front of the clearing, attempting to be a little lenient with him and not robbing Konohamaru when he was the much more valuable target. You were unable to have. I dunno, just asked me for a demonstration? Didn't expect you'd go poisoning me, he said, sliding up against the tree in a sitting position. Naruto helped him up. Or to get the drop on me for that matter. I was unable to be forced out of my henge by either Sakura or Sasuke. For what duration was that clone present at Moegi's place? A short while after the initial clone fell. Your lucky Khan doesn't listen. I told him to get back to the village when you first kidnapped her, and was planning on an ambush before he rushed in. If I didn't have that extra time to think, I don't know if I would have thought about the need for you to be interrogated instead of just killed. You had clones around the clearing the whole time? Yeah. I wasn't going to casually hint at the potential for an ambush. Naruto said, that's just throwing away my kunai pouch for no gain. His sensei looked up at him and then laughed lightly, coughing a little. What's so funny? Naruto asked. Nothing, just, how much you've grown, Iruka said. Naruto smirked. So I'm guessing I passed your little test then, considering I just outplayed a Chunin? Even though Naruto was aware that his sensei had been lenient and hadn't been expecting him to perform as well as he did, he couldn't help but feel a little proud of himself because, underestimation or not, he still defeated him. Avoid becoming arrogant. There, I didn't take you seriously, it was my fault. Iruka placed a hand on his chest and smiled painfully, saying, I'll get you in the rematch, though. Are you okay? Yeah, that stuff burns, but I'm alright. Glad you had the antidote. You're paying for that by the way, Naruto said, those things aren't cheap. Which of us used a poison to go? Which one of us tried to trick the other into nearly killing him? Naruto shot back with a smile. The pair looked up as they heard a ninja's voice call in the distance, the sound of sandals on tree limbs approaching them. Sounds like the reinforcements finally arrived, Naruto said. No. Iruka said as he sat up a little more, no, that's the sound of extra paperwork coming. Naruto was taken off guard as he registered what Kakashi just said. He wanted to use today to analyze Iruka's test with Kakashi, as that was the first real, or at least semi-real, combat situation he'd been in since the wave. But it appeared his sensei had other ideas. I haven't fully mastered water walking yet. You sure you want to teach me a jutsu, already? Naruto asked. They were stood in training ground 3, as it seemed Kakashi had taken to using their afternoons for training instead of missions since they got back from the wave. Just like before, Naruto was working with a clone. Yes, without a doubt. Naruto, you've gone above and beyond what I requested in terms of dedication. It demonstrates to me that you take being a ninja seriously and aren't just doing it to show off your cool jutsu to people. Given that you've turned into a genin, that's what I was searching for. It demonstrates a level of maturity that many people in your age group lack. Naruto felt a surge of pride at Kakashi's compliment. I don't receive many compliments. Kakashi grinned at him and said, "Thanks, sensei. What have you got for me?" "I'm actually gonna teach you too," Kakashi said. "Your plan is to become a mix between a ninjutsu specialist and a deception fighter, correct? These will help you get down that road. One of them will also help with your upcoming training." "How?" "The ninjutsu is Sweden. As previously stated, I am unable to assist you with the specifics of what you will be learning here in the near future. However, I am able to assist you with nature transformations, which will provide you with a solid foundation upon which to build. To make 3, I considered giving you a futon 1 as well, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. Take it from someone who is as knowledgeable about jutsu as I am. Learning a few techniques, practicing them, and pushing them to their limits is preferable to simply mastering one and moving on to another." Naruto responded, "Right. Learning a jutsu involved more than just mastering the technique. It also involved becoming accustomed to it, testing it, and knowing it like you would a practiced kick. So what jutsu are they then?" "First, a gift and a lecture." Kakashi reached in his equipment pouch, and produced 3 thin blue scrolls. "These are water scrolls. Unroll them, throw them on the ground, make the sign for ox and hare, and then stomp on it. You can use the good amount of water it releases for any Suidan jutsu." He handed them over, saying, "If you want to refill them, put an empty one in a lake or river, weave ox and hare again, and stomp on it again." "Oh my god. Many thanks, sensei. No issue. That brings us to our next point of conversation, which is why I am initially presenting you with these scrolls. Suidan and Doden jutsu are fundamentally different from the other 3 nature transformations. Can you guess how?" Naruto thought for a moment. "No, how? Most people that use Kaden, Futon, and Raiden jutsu do so by creating the element out of chakra. Suidan and Doden are both different. The ability to create water with chakra is possible, but incredibly taxing on one's reserves, and requires great chakra control. Creating small amounts that would be used in D or C ranked techniques are possible for most ninja, but to create the amount of water needed for ranked techniques requires incredible mastery. The Nindam and Sandame are the only ninja in Konoha's history known to be able to power such high-level water techniques. What about for Doden? Doden takes even greater amounts of chakra and control to create than Suidan, enough that creating the earth needed for a small D or C rank jutsu takes incredible mastery. To do so with a B or a rank technique is nearly unheard of. Throughout history, very few ninja mostly from Iwa have been able to claim to have done so. So can our Sandame. But let's get back to Suidan. Suidan and Doden are both unique in that most of their techniques use pre-existing elements to manipulate into jutsu, as in the surrounding water and earth, instead of creating the element. Does Futon not? There's air all around us. But you forget that Futon is wind style, not air style. Naruto gave him a skeptical look, and Kakashi put his hands up in defense. There is a difference, and getting into that difference is getting into a lot of nature transformation theory and philosophy, but trust me. To answer your question, you can sort of pick up a gust of wind with your chakra and use it for jutsu. Soon as Futon users are notably dangerous in sandstorms for that reason. But, whether or not the wind is about to blow on a normal day like today is unpredictable, and creating wind chakra is easy enough that most just go the route of forming it with chakra. You see, there's a trade-off in the elements. The easier an element is to make or find naturally, the easier it is to manipulate in its pre-existing condition, and the harder it is to form with chakra. The rarer it is in nature, the harder it is to manipulate in its pre-existing condition, but the easier it is to form with chakra. Earth lies on one end of the spectrum, lightning on the other. I think I get it, and I imagine being able to do either, forming Earth with chakra or manipulating existing bolts of lightning. Often lead to incredibly devastating effects, albeit at the cost of incredibly high amounts of chakra. Kakashi finished, so, I say all of that to say this. Don't waste your chakra trying to make water if you can help it. Use rivers and ponds when they are near first, those scrolls second, and creating water third. Yes, your reserves are incredible for your age. Use them wisely, and they become an even greater advantage. Got it. Don't waste my chakra if I don't need to. Alright, now the jutsus. I'm going to teach you, Suidan. Kakasu no Jutsu. The hiding.in. Water method. I believe you're familiar with it already. It's what the demon brothers used to hide in the puddle on the road to Nami no Kuni, a common jutsu in Kirigakure. It allows you to, in essence, melt into a body of water. I am aware that it isn't the most remarkable by itself. Naruto remarked, I like it. He had already thought of a few possibilities. If he had water nearby, he could essentially make his clones vanish into the water while they were engaged in combat and then surprise them by ambush. Alternatively, he could hinge them into weapons, conceal them, and then have a weapon ready from the water. I'm happy. It will provide a solid foundation for your Suiden training and become an even more powerful weapon as you add more Suiden jutsu to your repertoire. Can you guess why I might be teaching you this as well? After rubbing his chin, Naruto's eyes widened as it struck him. Do you believe Haku used his mirrors in that way? Shush. Kakashi said, putting a finger to his masked mouth. Be a little more subdued, you never know who might be listening. However, it's probably not this particular jutsu, but something similar. To be honest, Naruto kind of assumed that Haku's ice mirrors were some clan technique he'd learned that would be way out of Naruto's league. However, if he was an orphan as he claimed, that couldn't be the case, as Haku would have been developing his Hyoden on his own, just like Naruto. If Suiden Kakasu was a common jutsu to teach among Kiri ninja, it made sense that Haku would have been taught it by Zabuza or the Demon Brothers, before trying it with ice. It makes sense. I'll have to check to see if it functions. What is the alternative method? The other is Ninpo. Enun no Jutsu, another basic D-rank technique that, as the name suggests, releases a large smoke cloud via one's chakra, allowing for quick escapes, obscuring visuals, ambush tactics, and so on. They are usually more potent and longer lasting than standard smoke bombs, and since you have incredible reserves for your age, you can use it much more. Makes sense. What are the hand signs? Horse, bird, horse. It's a rather simple technique, one that doesn't require much chakra control. Just focus your chakra in a ball within your network as you. Poof. Naruto spouted into a coughing fit as he was suddenly surrounded by billowing clouds of black smoke that nearly obscured the whole clearing. Note to self, if you're gonna hold your breath for concentration, don't immediately inhale afterwards if you're casting this jutsu. Despite that, he couldn't help but grin. Its dark color made it even better than Zabuza's mist, which was about as dense, but he didn't think it lasted nearly as long. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, dissipating all the smoke, save some snaky tendrils of it still swirling on the ground here and there. His sensei reappeared with a sign of a ram's hand. On the opposite side of the clearing, his teammates could also be seen, all of them glaring daggers at Naruto. Next time, Kakashi replied, wait for my signal. But, I count myself even more impressed than before, Naruto. Your chakra control has obviously grown leaps and bounds to be able to perform that jutsu on your first try. Thanks, sensei, Naruto exclaimed, beaming broadly. Naruto grinned as he took a water scroll out of his equipment pouch, unwrapped it, and let it fall. Alright, let's move on to Suishin. Kakasu. Don't expect to get it early as well, though. Nature transformation is a lot different from regular ninja techniques. Go ahead and break out one of those scrolls for me. Before stomping on the scroll, he made the ox and hare signs. A stream of water sprayed out as if he had just popped a fire hydrant beneath his foot. Yes, he was going to enjoy himself. Ah, Naruto, good, you came early. Naruto closed the door after himself. With Konoha's yellow streetlights still on and extending downward through the tower window, the sun had not yet risen, was still just on the horizon, and a faint blue light was drifting in through the window. The light caught the side of the Sandame's face as he turned his head toward him and faced the village. A faint grin appeared on his lips. A doctor with a clipboard was standing next to him. Naruto asked, "You wanted to see me, old man?" Naruto was excited despite the fact that his morning drowsiness had not entirely gone away. He wasn't entirely sure what the Hokage would talk to him about. He assumed it would be about taking blood for the doctor's DNA test and possibly some future plans. However, since the tests are in a week, he might finally schedule a time to work on his bloodline, ideally wearing a new Chunin jacket. Yes, indeed. I trust you've kept the secret of your Hyoden bloodline since last we spoke? Yeah. Lips sealed on that one. The Sandame said, good. I'd like to take today to get you acquainted with your new instructor. Instructor? He pointed to the doctor and said, yes, I have asked him to meet us at 6:30. In the meantime, Date here. He said, he'll be checking a few things for me. In response, Naruto said, sure. Clipboard in hand, Date approaching. Good morning, Genin Uzumaki, he exclaimed. How are you feeling today? Good, I guess. Date pulled out a pen to write on his clipboard and said, excellent. My name is Date, and for the foreseeable future, I will be your primary doctor. Things like chakra nature can come into play in the medical field, said the Sandame, and keeping your chakra nature in your medical files is a bit too risky. So, should you be injured or in need of care, and come to Konoha's hospital, Date here will be the one taking care of you. Naruto said, alright, his personal physician, I didn't anticipate that. The last records Konoha's hospital had of you were when you were 6, from your mandatory checkup upon your entrance to the academy. So, I imagine these file records of your height and weight are quite inaccurate. Do you happen to know them off the top of your head? I weighed myself 2 weeks ago and I was 88 pounds, but I've done more training and changed my diet since then. I don't know my height. We'll say 88 for now. And for height, you seem 4'7", somewhere in that range. We'll have to get the exact numbers when you next come in. Blood type B. And your elemental affinities are Sweden, Futon, and Hyaden, correct? Yes. He scribbled something into his paper and said, okay. That further disproves that myth. Myth? Inquired Naruto. There's some old records of dubious legitimacy that claim the first Hokage's wife, who was also the first Kyuubi Jinchuriki, developed a fire nature after the sealing. It became a myth afterwards that the Kyuubi gave its host a fire nature. It has been disproved since, by you most recently. Now, speaking of your tenant, do you ever feel unexplained or uncontrollable bursts of aggression, anger, or malice? No? You sound unsure. Well, I mean, I've been angry before. Have you ever felt bursts of strength and speed during this time? Burning sensations in your chakra coils? Burn. What? No, I mean, I feel strong when I'm angry, but that's just what anger does. The added adrenaline and all that. He means, the Sandame said, to a strangely higher degree. Can you, or do you feel as if you can, perform feats far beyond your typical speed and strength, as though suddenly jumping from Genin to Chunin level, or Chunin to Jonin? No, nothing that big. Should I? Oftentimes, a Jinchuriki host is able to draw on their tenant's chakra in times of emotional distress, date stated, most often in times of extreme anger or frustration. The symptoms mentioned are often byproducts of this chakra. This is normal for a Jinchuriki. However, you haven't felt any of those sensations come upon you, with or without something to trigger the anger? Naruto took in the information and responded, no, nothing. To put it simply, he had always assumed that the Kyuubi was, well, in the stands rather than on the court. Was he now discovering that it could cause him to lose control of his temper? I'd not be concerned, Naruto. The Hokage replied, appearing to understand his nervousness. Your seal was created by the Yondaime himself, who was one of, if not the greatest Fuinjutsu master to have ever lived. If you've never felt any of those things, even when angry, it is testament to his skill. A little uneasy, Naruto remarked, yeah, got it old man. A knock on the door startled him. The Sandame said, enter. Naruto turned as Ebisu, as prim and proper as ever, walked in. Instead of asking him to wait for whatever it was he was there for, the Sandame simply nodded. Ebisu, good, 6:30 on the dot. As punctual as ever. I believe date was finishing with young Naruto here, if you could wait a moment. Ebisu shifted to the side of the room and said, of course, Lord Hokage. Naruto nodded as date poured some alcohol on a cloth, dabbed it on Naruto's arm, produced a needle, and drew some blood. Okay, Naruto, date said, I'll just need a blood sample, and that will be all for today. With a wince, Naruto avoided looking at his arm. Needles didn't appeal to him. Date pulled out his needle and applied a tiny bandage to the area, featuring a tiny toad that Naruto felt was too juvenile for a ninja. Date bowed and said, thank you very much, Naruto, Lord Hokage. According to the Sandame, thank you, Date. You may return to the hospital. Date closed the door after himself. Now Naruto, I believe you are familiar with Ebisu already? With some surprise, Naruto said, yeah, we've met. Is he going to be my instructor? Indeed. I approached him with the topic the day after our in Team 7's talk, proposing that he tutor you as an extended A-ranked mission. He has agreed to help develop your bloodline. So, has he trained others with bloodlines before? Not ones concerning nature transformations, but I have indeed helped many the Hyuga clan deemed hopeless cases, as well as others in their specific clan jutsu. Ebisu continued. I don't believe any in the village are experts in developing a virtually unknown bloodline, said the Sandame. However, Ebisu here is a Tokubetsu Jonin, with specific skills in mentoring and ninja development. In fact, to merely put them as skills, is understating the matter. Ebisu is an innate prodigy in regards to spotting the strengths and weaknesses hidden within a shinobi or kunoichi, and developing them into incredible assets to our village. Really? Inquired Naruto. He was aware that Tokubetsu Jonin were frequently at the top of their class in a particular field, but he was unaware of Ebisu's area of expertise. Indeed. His ability to pull attributes of a ninja out of their skill set and create styles and methods of fighting unique to them is unparalleled in the village. We owe many of our best Chunin and Jonin to him, and I trust no other more than him with the difficult task of building a bloodline from the ground up. Ebisu said, ah, your praise embarrasses and humbles me. Lord Hokage. His smile was neither ashamed nor humbled. Naruto examined the man from head to toe. The Hokage would naturally obtain the best teachers available if he wanted someone to instruct his own grandson. Then I look forward to working with you, Ebisu. Sensei, said Naruto. And you, Naruto, Ebisu said politely and formally. You will both write reports with weekly upon your progress, according to the Sandaime, though Ebisu will be building your bloodline in a way to complement your skill set. These reports will not be in regard to your skills. Those are still the responsibility of yourself and your Jonin sensei. Instead, the reports will be specifically upon your bloodline. You will meet 3 times a week to train. As today's session is towards the end of the week, you may include it in the report for next week. Today's session? Inquired Naruto. The Sandaime answered, of course, if you have not scheduled anything? Naruto grinned and said, no, he did have his daily schedule, but that could definitely wait, just didn't expect to be able to start so soon. Excellent. The Sandaime replied, I understand you have entered into the Chunin exams. If you qualify for the finals, you may prepare in whatever manner you see fit in the month between. However, I must still ask for 3 sessions a week with Ebisu in regards to your bloodline, even if you may not use it in the exam itself. The exams last a whole month. Naruto replied, I thought it was just a day. Konoha's Chunin exams have a series of preliminary events that can last anywhere from 1 to 7 days, depending on the number of the attendants. Ebisu clarified, for those who pass these events, they receive a month of free time, with no missions, to prepare for the finals, and then a finalist event. During that month, should you qualify, your time with Ebisu will continue, even if the skills you foster with him will not contribute to your performance. Said the Sandaime. I do apologize for the inconvenience, but the development of your bloodline for the sake of the village must take precedence. Why? Inquired Naruto. The Sandaime closed his eyes and took a few puffs from his pipe before responding, I mean, I'll do as you ask, but just out of curiosity, what's the problem with postponing it for a bit? I am afraid I cannot fully answer that question just yet, Naruto. I must simply say that your development as a ninja in the long run must be considered first to face threats that we believe may come, even if it slows you in the short run. I realize this must make you frustrated. And it did frustrate Naruto, but after taking a moment to breathe. Still, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what threats the Hokage had in mind. I am your shinobi, Lord Hokage, Naruto declared, and I'm at your command in all situations. If they revealed his ancestry, Kiri would be the only person he could think of. Was the old man planning that? To go public when Naruto was capable of defending himself against potential assassination? Naruto wasn't particularly offended, anyway. Even though his bloodline didn't help him in the Chunin exams, it was crucial that he was prepared to survive in the ninja world. Naruto nodded, grinning and bouncing slightly on the balls of his feet. Thank you for understanding, Naruto. Now, I believe you are eager to get started? Then Ebisu will take you here to Training Grounds 50.1. Oh, I forgot, I don't really know where that is. I thought Konoha only had 50? Ah, yes, I'd almost forgotten to inform you. The Sandaime responded, your training will not be taking place on one of our usual training grounds. With almost all of them out in the open and vulnerable to spies, I've decided that you will be training in an underground location. So where is it? About half a mile under Anbu's headquarters. Then it dawned on Naruto, and his eyes widened in reaction. Anbu's headquarters? Wouldn't putting a training ground under them possibly compromise there? With a smile, the Hokage said, it seems as though you've caught on? Naruto thought, you're allowing me to use Anbu's training grounds. Awkward. He was aware that his new bloodline might give him preferential treatment, but to be given the village's top teacher, a personal physician, and access to the most prestigious shinobi's training grounds? Naruto felt out of place and as though he hadn't earned it. Indeed. As the location is a secret, I'd ask you not mention its existence to other shinobi. Our operatives have been briefed on the circumstances of your training. You will be doing your training there for the reason of secrecy, but another as well. One of our Anbu operatives in the village has a nature transformation Kekkei Genkai. I thought Konoha didn't have any clans with a nature transformation? We do not. This is the Mokuton Kekkei Genkai. Unlike other nature transformations, Mokuton does not appear to pass down through its descendants, otherwise it would have appeared in the descendants of our Shodem Hokage. Through a series of events above either of your pay grades, one of our Anbu obtained the ability, and as he is the only one with experience in using the nature transformation Kekkei Genkai, he will be helping you in the process of combining your chakra natures. Naruto questioned, what's his name, before squirming and saying, oh, that's probably classified, isn't it? For now, you may call him Tenzo. He is currently on mission, and so will not be able to help you today. He is expected back within 2 weeks. As he is an active duty Anbu operative, the times he is available to help you will be limited. However, as both of your transformations are fundamentally different, he will not be needed in the areas of your training beyond helping you in the most basic aspect of Kekkei Genkei, which is to combine chakra natures. Tenzo. So wait, if I need him to even start with combining my chakra nature, what will we be doing today? I had planned on helping you with accessing the natures that make up your Hyden bloodline, stated Ebisu, as you will likely need familiarity with both of them before you can work on combining them. The Sandame said, "Any more questions, Naruto?" After shaking his head, Naruto said, "Then, I wish you the best of luck." As Naruto entered Training Grounds 50.1, he was acutely aware of the masked eyes that followed him. He followed Ebisu, who somehow had all the self-assurance and, "I'm allowed to be here" ness that Naruto did not, while keeping his head down. He turned to see a cat. Masked Kunoichi brandishing her sword, who had stopped in the middle of the scene when Naruto arrived. Just as he recalled the dumb toad bandage on his bicep, her eyes flicked over to it. He became acutely conscious of its existence. Ebisu and Naruto positioned themselves close to the rear wall. It was the size of 4 large gymnasiums, with training dummies on one side wall and a long row of weapon racks on the other. A sizable in-ground trough, resembling a tiny canal, ran along the rear wall where Naruto and Ebisu were located. Water was cycled through the wall by spigots. The Anbu in the room gradually resumed their activities, and the sound of training gradually filled the room once more. Naruto did as Ebisu instructed, "Go ahead and begin stretching. You seem a bit tense, Naruto." Naruto answered quietly, "Yeah, I don't think I've felt so out of place before." He seemed to be affected by his surroundings. "That is natural. I remember attending my first Jonin meeting, and feeling quite similar. Just remember that you were here on orders of the Hokage, and so deserve to be here just as much as they. And that all the people surrounding you, though outranking you, are your peers and fellow shinobi." "Right," said Naruto, struggling to categorize Anbu groups as peers. "The Hokage said you were eager to train me. Why's that?" "The majority of my desire is self-motivated," Ebisu admitted. "My greatest challenge and the pinnacle of my career will be helping to develop the systems and secret techniques of a future clan of Konoha, which is likely to be quite prevalent given that it will have a bloodline." From a professional standpoint, it made sense, so Naruto said, "Ah. However, I also have to say that your shift in perspective regarding becoming a shinobi impressed me during our most recent meeting. Even from our first meeting, I could tell you had a lot of potential, and I'm interested to see how far that potential can take you." "That's good," Naruto concluded his stretches, turning back to his sensei. "A lot of potential means I'm less likely to die in the long run. Now, I realize that you happen to run into a shinobi who could use Hyden while on your quest to Nami no Kuni. The fights play.by. Play was not mentioned in the report that I read. Do you recall specifics of his application of these techniques or any of his jutsu?" Ebisu said as he pulled out a piece of paper and jotted down some notes. "I arrived late to the fight, and only ever saw him use one technique," said Naruto. "He surrounded his opponent in a dome of mirrors made of ice." "A mirror dome?" "Yes. He might be able to blend in with them." According to Kakashi Sensei, it was a modified form of the Kakusu technique, which he has been requesting that I practice. However, they were all angled so that his reflection was visible in every mirror, and he would melt into them. It was impossible to determine which mirror he was actually in. From there, he threw Senbon while moving quickly from mirror to mirror. It felt like catching someone in a funhouse mirror maze, even when he was briefly out of sight between mirrors. You couldn't see the true one because there were so many reflections. And only after waking his Sharingan was Sasuke able to accomplish this? Yes. But we were unable to escape despite the fact that he could see him. Sasuke was also unable to use his fireball jutsu to melt the mirrors. Ebisu jotted down the specific, asking, "He couldn't?" "No, tried a few times too." "I see. And this is the only technique you saw?" replied Ebisu. "Yeah. It is good information, but that is precious little to go off of. I was hoping for some hints or directions to go. But, I suppose that just makes the challenge even greater." Ebisu grinned as he adjusted his glasses. "If you get the opportunity, could you ask your teammates and sensei if he'd used any other techniques?" "Sure thing. I guess I should mention that when the villagers of Nami no Kuni raided Gato's hideout, they found the Hyden shinobi's, items. They gave me all his scrolls. Been using them to improve myself bit by bit. If you'd like, I can let you have a look so you can get an idea of what kind of a shinobi he was, and how that could have paired with his Hyden." "Thank you, I think I will have you do just that. Now, as Lord Hokage stated, our training will not be addressing many of the main facets of being a ninja. Our one and only goal is to develop your skill in Hyoden, and create a suite of jutsu and techniques for future clan members to use. However, given that we are dealing with chakra nature, you will find that other areas you may wish to develop, such as ninjutsu expertise and especially chakra control, will be involved. I am told by Kakashi that you are currently working on the walking exercise. As Naruto put it, finished it, on Wednesday, he had done so. Ebisu pointed to the water trough next to them and said, "If you could demonstrate for me." Naruto carefully stepped on a small area. He could do it, but he had not yet done it in ordinary clothes and was afraid of getting wet somehow. However, because it was completely still, he was surprised to find that it was much easier than the river in Training Ground 3. Acceptable. Your chakra control will be one of the most important foundations to our work, so I'd like you to continue practicing. Training Ground 17 houses a small waterfall. Get to the point that you can spar upon it with a clone. By that point, your chakra control should be around mid to high Chunin level, which will be adequate for our purposes. According to Naruto, will do. Thank you. Now, you mentioned Kakashi has you working on the Kakasu technique? Are you able to perform it? Not yet. I started on it a few days back, and I got close once, but it's pretty difficult. That's alright. Many with chakra natures can learn the most basic of elemental techniques with no nature training. Those that do often have an easier time when such nature training comes. But that is what we will be working on today, nature training for your Suiden affinity. You can train your affinity? Yes. I have not yet trained one in futon nature, as the style is so rare in Konoha, but that will only take a bit of research on my part. Added to that, we do not need you at the level of mastery in your base transformations, which for Suiden training would be to reverse the course of a river, and for futon would be to cut a waterfall in half. Naruto was thankful that he didn't have to carry out either assignment. We only need you adept enough to access both transformations, so we can begin to mix them, which the starting exercises will qualify you for. Alright, said Naruto, what must I do? Your first exercise will be a simple one. First, sit in front of the trough, and place your hand upon the water. Then, you will simply need to draw up a ball of water into the air with your chakra. Naruto questioned, wait, so, do I draw it up with my hand? That looked challenging. No, keep your hand on the water at all times. You will levitate it into the air. Ebisu replied. Naruto winced slightly. He recalled the water dragon that Zabuza and Kakashi had created, but that seemed much more difficult. He didn't think he could do that if he couldn't lift water. Naruto glanced behind him. He felt as though all of the Anbu would be watching him when he turned his back, even though none of them were. Naruto sat cross-legged in front of the water, closed his eyes, and placed his hand on the surface before saying, "All right." As he focused, Naruto breathed in through his nose and out through his mouth. Let your chakra melt into the water, mix with it, let it become flowing and turbulent like water is. Do not let it spread, you desire control. Keep it in a ball. Then, draw it up. Slowly, his chakra soaked into the water. He had to do everything he could to keep his chakra contained as he started to perspire and hold his breath while sensing the water trying to spread it out. But before he could attempt to raise it, the thought of all the Anbu observing him returned to him, and the ball burst like a delicate bubble, his chakra transforming into a cloud in the water. According to Ebisu, breathe. In order to comply, Naruto released his chakra. Naruto relaxed and allowed his chakra to swirl up into a ball, forcing all of the Anbu's faceless stares from his thoughts. Your chakra must be relaxed. Flowing. Not stiff and tense. Naruto said, I think I got it. With his eyes clenched and his teeth exposed, Naruto pushed as hard as he could, saying, when you are ready, draw it up. After a few seconds, there was a small ripple at the trough's top. As he dropped it, Naruto's muscles relaxed and he inhaled deeply, as if he had dropped a huge weight. Ebisu remarked, a decent first attempt. Closing his eyes, Naruto sighed, but you must relax, again. Again, after snatching his sensei's arm, Naruto charged forward with his kunai. As he did, his sensei grabbed his wrist. Anticipating this, Naruto swung his trapped arm's elbow over Kakashi's bicep, turning his shoulder and hips into the blow. As the blow sailed past his nose, Kakashi leaned away and released Naruto's wrist. Naruto reverted to his stance. Good. Counter elbows are the typical response to a wrist lock like that. It needs to be immediate though, otherwise they can manipulate you into a compromising position, such as when I trapped your arm behind you at the start of the bell test. Since the Chunin exams are tomorrow, I don't recommend using it during them, since you haven't had much practice with it. Right. Said Naruto. You seem a bit distracted, Naruto. Exam nerves? Naruto looked up and said, huh? Oh, no, I was thinking about something else. And what's that? Nothing too major. I started with my, training yesterday, and I know it's dumb and immature, but I couldn't help but feel embarrassed. By what? Did you not perform as well as you thought you would? Well, no, but it was more because. Well, let me back up. I don't know if I'm allowed to just say where we're training, but we're doing our training around some Anbu. The elite of the village, huh? Yeah. I was sort of on their turf, and I felt the whole time like I was. I don't know, intruding or something. I know most of it was just that I was an uninvited kid in their territory, but I kept thinking of you and Zabuza. How you were both on a whole other level than me. I know it's dumb, but I felt like they looked at me the same way Zabuza did, like some kid who doesn't know what he's doing, or what he's in for. I imagine it must have felt like they looked at you like your old self, when you first walked into training ground 50.1. Exactly. And it doesn't much matter if other people look at me like that, it just matters what I actually am, ya know. But having that feeling put on me again was kinda offsetting, and I don't know, it bugs me that it bugs me so much. I don't want to care how they think of me. That's understandable. What matters is what you do, not what others think you do. Yeah. Wait. How do you know about training grounds 50.1? I didn't mention it, did I? With his arm moving to his sleeve, Kakashi uttered the words, "You didn't." As Kakashi lifted his sleeve to reveal the tattoo on his arm, Naruto realized, but only other Anbu know. Oh, said Naruto. Been retired for a few years now, but I was a part of the Anbu for the longest time. Came in when I was just about your age. Naruto looked up. How old is he? Did he hear correctly? Simply, what was his sensei's quality? My age? Inquired Naruto. His sensei smiled distantly and said, yep. That smile, for some reason, was in stark contrast to the fact that he had recently discovered his sensei. What could make an Anbu so indolent, joking, aloof, human? Naruto remarked, you don't seem like you fit the mold. Well, that certainly hurts a little. No, I just mean, you're not some emotionless person or something. Nobody in Anbu is. Naruto looked at his sensei bewilderedly, saying, the Anbu masks do a great job at what they're supposed to do, cover what's underneath and make you think you're looking at a soulless killing machine. Trust me when I say that every single one of my colleagues is a human. Under their masks, they all have personalities, laugh at jokes, feel happy, have bad days, and cry when their friends die. None of them are people's perceptions of them. When I first entered training grounds 50.1, I felt a lot like you did. I was the youngest Anbu in Konoha's history at the time, and the record has since been beaten, but I saw the same thing you did as something bigger and stronger than myself, and they saw me as if I were a kid trespassing on their territory. I wanted their respect, to be one of them, but shouting at everyone to respect you doesn't get much respect, so I just followed your instructions and kept being the person they believed me to be. Eventually, their perception of me matched my true self. The point I'm trying to make is that you spent a lot of time worrying about what this village thought of you, Naruto. Don't get too caught up because that instinct is still in your brain. It will pass. In the meantime, follow what you know. Be the person you are, and they will change their views with time. The ones who don't will just be living in a fantasy. Naruto looked up to his sensei, one of the first people to think he was more than what the village said he was. Naruto grinned as he said, thanks, sensei, for everything. Kakashi returned the smile and said, you're more than welcome, Naruto. Naruto believed that having a proud parent must have felt something like this, but he had no idea what it felt like. His sensei gave a rare laugh and asked, so does getting the tattoo hurt? It was a genuine one that Naruto had only heard a few times, not one of his fakes or the ones he used to entice someone. Yeah, it's a Fuinjutsu seal as well, and those almost always hurt. What's it do? Classified, Naruto. Like Konohamaru, Naruto exclaimed. Ah, come on. Kakashi gestured him over for their team's final team building activity before the tests, saying, tell you what, you get in the Anbu, and then you can find out what they do. Naruto grinned and followed. He may need to accept the offer from his sensei. Who was he kidding, I wonder? He was most likely not Anbu material. Hey, you. With the attitude, hold on. Naruto let out a mental sigh. He was finding it difficult to maintain his patience right now. Sasuke almost got into a fight with a door guard while attempting to screen out possible rivals, competition that Team 7 was now assured to face, before they had even reached the first Chunin exams test a scratch that they had only been in the building for 5 minutes. Furthermore, he disclosed to the teams mentioned above that Sakura was the analytical one on Team 7, that they could see through genjutsu, and that if that green spandex genin hadn't intervened, he would have displayed his own skills for everyone to see. Behind them, on the balcony, stood said green spandex genin. Naruto examined him from head to toe. One small silver lining from Sasuke's dubious decision making was that he had been impressed by this one's speed when he had stepped between Sasuke and the guard. Additionally, he discovered that this Genin's team was somewhat cunning because their initial plan was to appear weak. The more information the better, even if that was all he knew. Sasuke turned and asked, "What do you want?" Naruto blinked and said, "I want to fight, right here, right now." Was this man real? That had only negative consequences. Before the tests even began, he would simply waste his endurance, expose his own skills, and run the risk of getting hurt. Sasuke squinted his eyes and said, "You want to fight me here and now, huh?" "Yes." Lee exclaimed, leaping from the barrier and crouching with a dexterity and poise that caught Naruto off guard. "My name is Rock Lee. You said it was common courtesy for a challenger to give his own name first, right, Sasuke Uchiha? So you know me." Lee said, "I challenge you." It was Naruto's turn to squint at the Genin. Everyone is always talking about the Uchiha clan, and how great they are. I want to see if it is true. I figure you will be a good test for me. Was an act committed here? Was he merely attempting to undo the harm caused by displaying his strength by portraying himself as tactically incompetent? And also, Lee added, turning to face Sakura. "Oh Sakura. I love you." Naruto furrowed his facial expression. He was doing a pretty good job at it, if it was an act. In fact, he brought back memories of Naruto's Nami no Kuni self, if not more chivalrous. "Ah!" Sakura yelled. "Those eyebrows can't be real. Your hairstyle is horrible too, and those eyebrows are so bushy. You're such a weirdo." Lee exclaimed, "You are an angel sent from heaven." As Lee yelled more sweet nothings at a very irate Sakura, Naruto turned to face Sasuke. Was that? Did he notice the thoughtfulness on Sasuke's face? Naruto let out a mental sigh and then let out a mental groan of frustration. Naruto muttered under his breath, "Sasuke. I like a good pointless fight as much as the next guy, but I think we should pass this up. No, this'll be a good gauge of the kind of competition I'll be facing in these exams. I'm serious. We already have eyes on us from the stunt you pulled earlier, added to the eyes that were already on us for having the number one boy and girl in the academy in our team. If you fight him, then the info on what you can do will get back to his team, and spread from there. When did you get all analytical? Besides, I don't remember you being the authority of Team 7, Naruto." "I'm not saying I am, just, alright, what if you get injured? What if this costs you lots of energy? What if you, our leader, gets incapacitated before the exams? Then we'd be down a teammate already, and for what? I'm just saying this is a bad idea." Sasuke grinned at him. "Well, maybe it is for the person on our team who wasn't the top of the class. Are you serious right now? This isn't some jab at whether you can beat him, or our rivalry, or whatever. I'm trying to say. I wouldn't exactly call us rivals." Sasuke looked up at the clock, the only thing Naruto said that seemed to weaken his resolve to make poor choices. "I'm trying to say," he continued, trying to maintain his patience, "that this doesn't just affect you, Sasuke. People knowing what you can do affects me and Sakura as well. If nothing else, look at the clock. We only have 30 minutes until the exams begin." That might have put him off, Naruto thought. Nexta. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose as Sasuke stepped forward and said, "I accept. Let's do it, don't worry, this won't take more than 30 seconds. Naruto thought about just turning around and walking away, but Sasuke hurried forward. However, no showing Lee disapproval within his team would not help. Furthermore, if Lee was engaged in combat, Naruto could attempt to learn more about him, including potential jutsu and other details, should the situation escalate. Lee's stance was Naruto's first move. One arm in front of him, one behind his back. It was an odd decision. "I can beat you with one hand behind my back." Was he making fun of Sasuke? Lee vanished in a flash of green as Sasuke charged in and swung a fist at him. When Naruto saw Lee hovering over Sasuke's shoulder, he crossed his arms and blinked. He threw his whole body into the devastating sweep of a roundhouse swing. Had Lee not done it almost instantly, Naruto would believe it had a wind up that was far too great to be effective. Lee shouted, "Leaf Hurricane," as Sasuke ducked under it and his blow clipped his hair. Naruto's mouth fell open. "Did you? From way over here, did he just sense the wind of that kick? Power was that? That came from both the power Lee had added to the technique and its already impressive natural torque. Before lightning. Fast follow. Up kick pierced Sasuke's defenses. He was stumbling. Not only was he quick, but he also produced amazing power. He had a keen sense of accuracy. As he raised it, he had woven the strike between Sasuke's guard. He didn't expect that from a genin, but rather from someone like Kakashi Sensei. Lee returned to his stance as Sasuke rolled with the blow and went to his knees. This time, Naruto paused to consider it carefully. He believed he was beginning to understand Lee's taijutsu philosophy even from the brief conversation, and if he was correct, it was horrifying. The sideways stance and the hand behind the back almost unconsciously encouraged turning the entire body into a blow, similar to Lee's leaf hurricane, even though it appeared to be out of the ordinary with the rear hand so far away from the action. It extracted all of the power that could be produced if you allowed it to flow organically. Normally, that would cause you to slow down a great deal. Typically. But when you had a big speed advantage in a fight, all those drawbacks vanished. In actuality, it was most likely the most destructive method of using speed to your advantage. With minimal effort, a single blow could render someone crippled. Naruto could only see a drawback if your opponent's speed was similar. Then, as your opponent used standard strikes that didn't require all that movement to slow them down, all the time you wasted putting your entire body into strikes would come back to haunt you. That was why the style was peculiar. In the world of ninjas, it was very likely that you would run into someone who was faster than you. If Naruto had to guess, Lee was fast at least Chunin level, but if he focused solely on honing his taijutsu and physical skills and ignored everything else, which Naruto doubted, he would be much less effective than Genin level opponents in his future career, at least in the taijutsu world. But since Naruto was not a Jonin and had to face this guy in the exams, none of that mattered much at the moment. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and stood up. When Naruto saw that Sasuke's left eye now contained the second Tomo, he did a double take. Only a few weeks prior, he had obtained Kakashi's scroll on Sharingan. Had he made that much progress with it already? Lee merely kicked him into the air beneath his guard as his teammate rushed him. Naruto scowled. Sasuke simply wasn't fast enough, despite the Sharingan's ability to predict movements. Lee vanished once more, materializing in midair behind Sasuke with the bandages on his arms unfolding. What was this? With his hands woven upward and the bandages rising through the air, he exclaimed, "It is time for me to prove that hard work beats natural talent. You're finished." Before. His right bandage was nailed to the wall by a senbon with a spinning flower top. Looking at the trajectory, Naruto discovered a turtle. The turtle exclaimed, "All right, that's enough, Lee." Sakura rushed forward to catch Sasuke as Lee and Sasuke flailed a little in midair, with Lee crouching in front of the turtle. At the animal, Naruto furrowed his brow. He had read in Haku's scrolls about animal summons. Was this one of them? It had to be. No other animal he had ever encountered was able to speak. Lee questioned, "You were watching us the whole time?" The turtle said sharply, "Of course, that last technique is forbidden. You could have killed him, what's wrong with you?" "I'm sorry. I did not meant to. I wasn't planning to use it, you understand, Lee replied. That was noted in the back of Naruto's mind. Lee therefore employed a tactic that entailed hovering behind the adversary. What a setup. He needed to be ready if he ever found himself in that situation. Naruto went up to his group. "You're a disgrace," exclaimed the turtle. Naruto glared at Sasuke, who glared back before wiping a small amount of blood from his lip. "You think a lame excuse like that will get you out of trouble? A shinobi never reveals his techniques unless absolutely necessary. It's such a basic rule, you should know it by now," Naruto said. Naruto remarked, "I think we're done here, aren't we?" Sasuke got up and bounded past Naruto, bumping into his shoulder along the way. As Naruto heard Lee's sensei seem to chastise him, he snarled and followed him out, Sakura following. There were at least 100 potential genin seated in the classroom when Naruto entered. If Naruto's first look was to be believed, a good half were leaf ninja, but the others were either from Suna or the smaller villages. Since almost all of them were older than he was, they all had a reach advantage. Naruto scowled. The reach disadvantage one began their career with was one of the issues with teaching shinobi and kunoichi at such a young age as 12. Naturally, it would be a waste of time to teach them later in life because... A girlish voice exclaimed with delight, "Sasuke, where have you been?" Breaking his train of thought, Naruto turned to catch a glimpse of Ino Yamanaka hanging over his teammate's shoulders. Sasuke didn't seem very happy. "You have no idea how much I was hoping you'd show up here. I've missed those brooding good looks of yours." Sakura shouted, "Hey, Ino.pig. Back off, he's mine." Naruto took a few steps away from the conversation that followed, feeling a little sorry for Sasuke even though he was currently annoyed with him. "Oh, it's you guys," said a different voice. Naruto turned to his longtime academy friends and grinned. Naruto asked, "What's up, Shika, Choji? How you guys doing?" "Man, I knew this exam was gonna be a drag, but I didn't know it was gonna be this lame. With you here, Naruto." Shikamaru replied. Naruto grinned back at him. Love you too, man. How've you been since the Genin exams? Shikamaru came back after watching his teammate eat chip after chip, saying, bored, mostly. Naruto turned to Kiba and stifled his third or fourth sigh of the day, saying, well, what do ya know? Looks like the whole gang's back together again. You guys too, huh? Asked Shikamaru. As the three Genin teams huddled together at the front of the class, Hinata and Shino fell behind their teammate, saying, man, everyone's here for this stupid thing. Yep, here we all are, the 9 rookies. This'll be fun, at least, for those of us good enough to make the cut, right Sasuke? Kiba responded. Sasuke smirked and said, Kiba, careful you don't get overconfident. Kiba turned as if for the first time to see Naruto. Naruto thought he might run into Kiba during the exams. Oh, and you're here as well, Naruto. I wondered if you were dumb enough to join in, but I guess it's just lucky for us, huh? Gives your team an ankle weight to deal with through the exams? By the time he arrived, he thought he would be more patient, but Sasuke had run his well pretty low today. Kiba. Naruto merely nodded his head in response, not having much faith in himself. He calmed himself by taking a breath. There was no need to agitate Kiba because he was still a fellow shinobi. Shikamaru glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. After a brief moment of eye contact, they both turned their heads away. Shikamaru was always the type to think things through. It's likely that he noticed a change in himself. When Naruto realized he had lost the chance to act like his previous untalented self, he mentally grimaced. Since many of the Genin here were familiar with his previous personality, that might have been a tool he could have used. When another newcomer, this time a Genin Naruto, didn't recognize he had presented himself, Naruto looked up and said, boy, you guys are loud. He was slender, with silver hair and glasses. Appeared to be between 17 and 19 years old. Naruto gave him a raised eyebrow. Perhaps a Genin for a living? Kiba said, and who are you? He prodded a thumb over his shoulder at the group of Genin who were all observing them, many of them with glares on their faces and a few with looks of hunger and greed, as if the idea of spilling their blood would brighten their day. It's not about who I am, but who you are. You guys are the rookies of this year's academy, right? That makes you all the easiest pickings for guys like them. Basic intimidation tactics and killing intent, was Naruto's thought as he pulled himself together. Nobody's really like that. And after Zabuza, these guys aren't terribly frightening. Those over there are from AIM. Short tempers. Everyone's tense, so I'd advise not setting anyone off, said the Genin. Sasuke remarked, you seem informed. What's your story? Me? I'm Kabuto Yakushi. A pleasure. As to my info, well, I've taken this exam a good 7 or so times now, so I know the ropes pretty well, so he was a professional Genin. 7 times. That's right. I'm probably the most experienced person in the exams. Got info on every attendant, if you'd like to know any info on someone. Info? On my info cards, Kabuto said, holding out a big deck. He displayed one with a slight air distortion that indicated he had just used chakra. A world map suddenly materialized. Who would you like to know about? Rock Lee of Konoha, and Gaara of Suna. Kabuto grabbed the 2 cards and gave them to Sasuke, saying, it's no fun if you already know their names. Before Naruto interrupted, he appeared prepared to explain them. Do you have just a general list of the top prospects this year? Replied Naruto. I can give you the teams that most people are expecting to do well, if that's what you're asking, Kabuto replied. He accepted the offered cards and sorted through them, saying, thanks, that works perfectly. He would like to read every card in Kabuto's deck, but since the test was about to begin, a quick overview of the best teams would have to do. But he still had to keep his eyes open. Asking for a list of the top prospects in theory did not ensure that you would receive the top prospects in practice because ninjas were skilled at deceit. One could even argue that the best team would not want to be recognized as such. I should warn you, I can't guarantee full info on the teams, just declassified mission history and known abilities. Added to that, this year's crop of Genin probably have the best potential of all the Chunin exams I've been to. This'll be one of the most competitive tests in years. Kabuto continued. After reading this list, Naruto couldn't help but agree. If the third missing card in Sasuke's stack was any indication, one of the Suna teams, the one that featured that Gaara character, had finished an A-rank mission. Similar to his own A-rank, Naruto would typically attribute this to the Jonin sensei, but they also had a few B ranks. Not much info on this team from Otto. What makes them top prospects? Replied Naruto. Oh, those guys? Replied Kabuto. They're a smaller village, real recent. Normally that means the shinobi are untested and weaker, and often results in high fatality rates in the first few years, but these ones have a mission record that implies high survivability. Even though their abilities are unknown, to perform in a highly fatal field means they must be goo. A pair of kunai struck the ground where Naruto and Kabuto were standing, causing them to leap back. The aforementioned Auto Genin was hurrying Kabuto when Naruto's eye darted up into the air. One of them, a Genin with a bandaged face, raced in Kabuto's direction and swung a gauntleted fist. Kabuto retreated from the blow. Kabuto's glasses broke, and Naruto took a closer look. Was that a hit? No, there was another reason. Kabuto collapsed to his knees and vomited, his eyes widening. Genjutsu. It had to be. Who else could do that without coming into contact with him? The Auto Genin declared, "You are correct in saying that we are good. I guess you're no veteran after all, huh?" Another spiky haired Auto Genin said, "Write this on your card." Naruto glanced up and down at them, focusing on the bandaged Genin's gauntlets. The Genin from Auto will be Chunin when this is over, guaranteed. There were holes of some sort all over them. The odd design decision suggested that they were either a tool of some sort or aesthetically pleasing, which Naruto questioned. He exhaled slowly, as if Auto's team had finished their performance, and took his hand off his kunai pouch, which he had only now realized had been resting on it during the brief event. Stuffing his hands into his pockets, Naruto headed for an empty table nearby. When he saw Sakura helping the boy up, he sat down and started reading Kabuto's cards once more. After the first part of the test, Naruto would have to return the cards to him. He blinked. He didn't have Lee's card because Sasuke had taken it, but Lee's team was also among the prospects. Tenten, whose last name is not provided, and Neji Hyuga. Maybe one of the Kyuubi attack orphans? Alright, you baby-faced degenerates, pipe down and listen up. Naruto looked up as the exam proctor, accompanied by several Chunin, poofed into the room in a cloud of smoke. As the room turned to face the proctor, Naruto slipped the cards into his pockets and said, "It's time to begin. I'm Ibiki Morino, your proctor for the first exam. First, ground rules for your exam. No fighting under any circumstances for this first test. Any who even thinks of doing so will be disqualified immediately. That means you three." He raised his hand to the Auto Genin, "Get back to your seats." In an unapologetic tone, the gauntleted Genin said, "Sorry, first time in the exams, didn't know. Second, you are to follow our rules at all times, no matter what. Any deviation or hesitation will result in immediate disqualification. Understood?" The group nodded. "Good. Now, hand in your paperwork and turn in your applications. You will each be given a number. This will determine where you will be seated. We will start the written test, once you've began." As he awaited the proctor's approval, Naruto twirled the pencil in his hand. He drummed his foot on the ground, eager to turn his test over and get started. He felt a little nervous. During the academy, he never performed well on written exams, and if he did poorly, it seems that his entire team did too. He had spent the last few weeks studying Haku's scrolls, but a scholar was not made in a few weeks. His eyes swept over the rows. Near the front were the majority of the rookies. He was near the back of the line because he had been there when he received his number. Naruto mentally went over the rules once more. With 10 points for each player, his team started with 30 points. You lose a point if you don't answer a question. Your team's final score determines whether you pass or fail. If any player scored 0 points, their entire team failed. Naruto understood that. To be a Chunin, you had to be able to collaborate with others. It was much more likely that the rest of your team would fail if you lost a teammate. The last rule is, of course, to never cheat. You would lose 2 points if you were caught. You and your team failed if you were caught 5 times. Naruto questioned why they didn't fail them right away given that all the proctors were watching and that Ibiki took so long to stress that they shouldn't cheat. After the first 9, there seemed to be a last question. He had a little over 6 minutes for each question on the exam, which took an hour to complete in total. As the Chunin in charge of identifying cheaters sat down by the windows, Naruto looked up at the proctor. Then Ibiki said, "All right. Begin." Naruto turned his page over. A formula for decoding was the first question. Naruto swore in his head. From the academy, he was never good at decoding. Even worse, if his first impression was correct, this was pentahelix encryption, which means that this single coded message contained 5 different encryptions. The algorithm that determined which encryption was used for a given letter was frequently based on the letter before or after it. In the academy, Naruto had only practiced bihex encryptions, and he was rarely successful. If he had the entire week, he might be able to accomplish this, but not in 6 minutes. He could afford to make some mistakes, so it's okay. The next question remained for him. Shinobi A is seated upon a treetop throwing a kunai at Shinobi C. Calculate the arc at variable velocities and time intervals for the following positions E, F, G, and H, then calculate. Naruto ceased reading. He was not going to benefit from numbers. Then the next one. Naruto exhaled a sigh of calm. On anatomy, the third question was asked. Among the few topics he had been studying from Haku's scrolls was that one. He read the question, which asked which nerve in the lower leg was in charge of a particular muscle's movement. Oh my goodness, was that the superficial or deep peroneal nerve? With the intention of deleting one at the end of the test, or if he remembered beforehand, he wrote down both. He went on. Below is a political map from the Second Shinobi World War. Identify the specific day this map depicts based on the territorial expansions of each nation, and label each box with the battalion and companies present on the front line for each nation. One wrong label results in failure of this question. The map was full of boxes that covered the borders of every country. Naruto furrowed his brow. Did they want that particular day? And every single company and battalion? That was absurdly detailed. Naruto went on. Naruto looked at every question. Naruto's brain was refusing to tell him which nerve was the answer, so he only had a remote chance of answering number 3. What was this? This was Jonin information, not even Chunin level. Was he supposed to be aware of this? Before returning to his test, Naruto looked up to inspect the proctors. There was no justification for them to believe he was unfaithful. He didn't want 2 more points taken away from him because he could already only respond to one question. Beneath, why didn't they start failing people right away? Naruto took another chance to look around the room. The majority of the others appeared to be under a lot of stress, as they held their heads in their hands and rubbed their eyes. Why was the test so challenging that nearly no one passed? It nearly resembled. He was being encouraged to cheat by them. It must be that. As soon as possible, Naruto returned his attention to his paper, being cautious not to let the proctors see him looking elsewhere. Everything made sense. This was not a general knowledge test. It was an information gathering test. He should have cheated and escaped detection. Naruto suppressed a grin. Even though he isn't the best student, this served as his wheelhouse. Then, how can one cheat? He couldn't use his smokescreen jutsu. He didn't want to risk making hand signals because it was too obvious. What else? Kage Bunshin, perhaps. How might he put it to use? Consider asking to use the restroom, trying to sneak one out, and having it sign the answers at him while spying through the window outside. It was unlikely, particularly because the students nearest the window were still quite a distance away, making it difficult to interpret the responses. Getting the clone out in the first place without being noticed was another issue. Although it was a good backup, he still required a primary strategy. He could possibly read test answers if he had a reflective surface of some sort. He didn't think proctors would simply let him pull out a kunai or something and place it on the desk, which was the problem. Other than that, he had no other reflective surfaces. He did, however, have his headband. Taking it off and placing it on the desk might be a little less noticeable. However, if he did, it would still attract attention, and the proctors would be watching him to do something with it. That is, unless he had a compelling reason to remove it. What, then, would be a valid excuse? Perhaps sweating. Make it appear as though he was under stress and wanted to remove the hot headband. When he put his headband down, he would also need to get the angle exactly right the first time. He wasn't an easy sweater, and he wasn't sure he could just get up and perform some jumping jacks without getting people to stare. Perhaps he could perform a silent chakra exercise without anyone noticing. At first glance, he was unaware of any, much less ones that would generate perspiration without requiring him to move. He wished he had some sort of jutsu that could, even though such a technique was useless. Naruto let out a mental sigh as he realized the solution. Even though it was the safest option, he detested the thought. He might be able to make the water on his skin appear to be sweating if he could control his Sweden nature. However, if was the key word. Despite getting a little closer to mastering the Kakasu technique, he had not yet been able to levitate already existing water in his practice with Ebisu. In fact, this was producing water. Yes, a little, but still. It was the first time he had attempted to do so. Okay. There was no harm in trying, even if he couldn't. After all, he still had the clone plan. Naruto gave the examiners a quick look. First and foremost, he would have to prove that he was under stress. He sighed loudly as he ran a hand through his hair and closed his eyes. In the process, he collected as little chakra as possible in his stomach. He scrunched up his brow, bouncing his legs, and opened his eyes. Ebisu. Sensei's words replayed in his mind as he concentrated on the ball of chakra in his stomach. Your chakra must be relaxed, flowing, not stiff and tense. He exhaled. It was a difficult task, appearing anxious while deliberately unwinding. His face muscles tensed up, and he closed his eyes once more, but he allowed the rest of his body to relax. He sat back in the chair, relaxed his abdomen, and relaxed his legs. He noticed a proctor looking at him out of the corner of his eye. Excellent. The more stressed he appeared to be, the better. Let your chakra melt. Let it become flowing and turbulent like the water. In his stomach, Naruto's chakra started to roll like a sloshing ball of water. It fluctuated in intensity. This step was never problematic for Naruto. He was able to manipulate it in the water with relative ease. It was much harder to make it happen with his chakra, but it was still possible. He was always concerned about the next step, which was to move the chakra. Sweetened chakra simply refused to follow his instructions. Let it flow. Don't force it. As soon as he attempted to push the ball up his coils, it instantly dissipated, and Naruto let out a real sigh. Let it flow. What did that even mean? In any case, he might give the cage bunshin concept a try. But his doubts about the idea's viability grew as he gave it more thought. They wouldn't simply let him use the restroom by himself. A proctor would be dispatched. A single set of eyes was preferable to a group, but he wasn't sure he could even remove the hand sign without the proctor noticing because he would be on the lookout for anything fishy. What, then, could he do? Ebisu's words from their lesson reappeared. Under my tutelage, failure does not occur when you cannot do something. It occurs when you give up. This is the most important thing I can teach you, Naruto. Naruto took a breath. Okay. Well, one more try. He relaxed as he slowly reshaped the ball in his stomach. Like a tiny wave repeatedly crashing in on itself, it flowed and ebbed. As he breathed in and out, the tide flowed. He allowed the proctor's eyes, the scratching of pencils, and the outside world to fade. Only he and his chakra were present. He took one breath and exhaled it again. The ball was now completely sweetened chakra. Ebisu replied, "Good. Draw it up when you're ready." It wasn't pushed by Naruto. He didn't try to get it to do his bidding. Rather, he simply opened his coils, and the sweetened chakra poured into it like a river, moving so effortlessly up to his head that he was taken aback. In fact, before it all poured out through his pores, he had to shut the coils around his face. He prevented it from spreading. He wanted command. Rather, Naruto, whose chakra control had been refined over hours of training, opened a coil on his forehead just a centimeter, as if he had opened a faucet. And after a few seconds, a tiny drop of water trickled down his forehead. After a minute, he released another. Then one more, and one more. Naruto appeared anxious on the outside, but he was grinning on the inside. He took his headband off.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.